Good evening and welcome to the Federal Way School District Board of Education meeting dated October 15th, 2013. In attendance, Director Wilson, Director Barney, Director Moore, Director Griffin, and Director Peterson. If you all would join us in the pledge, led by our Federal Way High School JROTC.
Ours, right, shoulder, hoots. Forward, hooch. Forward, halt. Left, peace. Present, olive.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gary, olive. Olive, host. Ready, step, host, colors. Ready, cut, colors, return. Right, peace. Forward, hooch.
You may be seated. All right, board members, at this time, if you'll look over the board agenda for this evening's meeting.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of October 15th, 2013 as submitted.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion on the board agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Board members should also have a consent agenda in their forms.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of October 15th, 2013 as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries unanimously as well. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all. We're glad that you came out. We know that this should be a very lively and spirited meeting, and we look forward to getting into full conversation. For those of you without an agenda or a form to fill out to make public comments, you can find this blue form back on the table, and of course, we welcome your comments this evening. Board members, if you're looking at your agenda this evening, on item 6 at 6:05, there is a topic motion from board members. At this time, we will have a conversation. As many of you know, I have run into some difficulties as of late, and I thought that it would be great if we had a transparent conversation before the community about leadership moving forward. And so this meeting could have been done quietly, but I just felt that it was important for us to bring it forward, and it's one of those difficult conversations of transparency that I hope all government officials exercise. And so having said that, I will open up for conversations with board members.
President, I'd like to make a motion.
Director,
Yes, sir.
can you pull the mic?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion. I move to replace our president.
Okay. Does that motion have a second?
I second that motion.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I would like to say that I am disappointed that we are here to this point and that a resignation has not been given yet. The role of president, clearly in our policy governance, it's not a right, it's a privilege, and it's someone that represents the board. And it's clear that Director Moore's personal legal matters right now are a distraction to the great and important work going on in our district. It has eroded public trust, and I believe it taints our decisions moving forward as him as president. As we vote on this motion, this vote is not whether or not he's innocent or guilty. The courts will decide that he's innocent until proven guilty. But rather, this is an opportunity to begin to restore public confidence and trust in this board and getting back to the focus of students and our teachers and the great work that's ahead of us.
Thank you. Further comments?
While I agree with the motion, I want to make sure that I put out there that my sole focus on the second would make sure that we remain focused on moving forward in our role as district leaders and as moving the work forward, regardless of whether it's global initiative, whether it's our work around equitable learning, or whether it's our work around making sure we're providing opportunities and access for all students. So I second that motion, but really want to make sure it's bound and ground in my focus on moving forward.
Thank you.
I'd like to share that I don't agree that there needs to be a resignation from our president for this position. I believe that it's a board decision as to whether or not Tony Moore should remain president, as well as any other position that's on this board. And so the public communication is happening so that so as a board, the five of us can discuss and talk about whether or not there is any type of distraction or concern by the personal activities that are happening with Mr. Moore. And so I would say that we need to be clear about what the role of president is based on our policy governance and our procedures that we have in place. And the role of president is to represent the school board at any time that the school board can't represent itself as a whole. Our role of president has been the spokesperson with the media and around communications around the work of the board. And so the concern that has come up is that our president, with the personal issues that he has been having, when he is out in the public representing the school board, we don't want him to be in a position where people are questioning his personal concerns over the work of the school board and the school district, and that there's a distraction from him being able to communicate the work that we're doing in the school district. And so that's why, I'm wanting us to have this discussion around whether or not the president position should continue with Mr. Moore.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Well, I'll just go ahead and put in my 2 cents worth as it is. I honestly do not feel that there is a problem with Mr. Moore remaining as president. He has been, over the years, been able to separate his personal life from the business of the board. He has been a strong advocate for students and this district. And I believe that as he continues to pursue whatever it is, that he will continue to be able to keep his personal life and his professional life separate, whatever we can decide with this board.
Thank you. Director Peterson, thank you for your comments. I did not choose to resign because I felt that we should be more transparent. So it wasn't that the easy thing would have been to resign if I felt that that was the right move and slide down to the end and not give the public really their right to have this conversation. This conversation is difficult to have in public, but it's one that must be had in public. We have to be more transparent, not less. So that is why I did not choose to resign earlier, but bring this public, because I think our government should be more public. So more discussion on the topic. Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I believe we're at a 2-2. And so I believe that I'm going to cast my vote to resign. Having said that, I want to thank this board for allowing me to serve. I believe that the most important thing that happens in this district has to do with our kids. It's far more important than any one person. Your kids are the most important thing, and the future of our country depends on it. And not to be a distraction, I choose to vote to resign. So I want to thank you all for letting me serve and I look forward to the great work we'll do in the future. With that in mind, I will turn the gavel over to Director Griffin, who now is our acting president, where we can hold a vote. Let's switch places.
So now that we have an open president position, then we need to have a motion put out for who we would like to have as our new board president. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that Angela Griffin become our president at this time.
Thank you.
Second it.
Thank you. I appreciate that offer, being that we have about a month and a half left before we will be making a new election for board president and vice president, any other position we have on this board. I would like to not step into that role and allow one of our other board members the opportunity to gain some leadership skills in this position and carry this work forward. So do we have another motion for
I'll nominate
President.
Clara Wilson.
I'll second.
hearing a motion and a second? Any comments, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So passes. Claire, you move here? You move back over there?
All right.
Tony needs that. I appreciate the confidence of the board. I also appreciate the fact that Tony will continue on the board. I want to make that very clear, that the only resignation is stepping down as president of the board, but his experience and his leadership, excuse me, as Ed had said in the district, is and still will be valuable to the work as we move forward. So I just really want to make sure that that point is clear. Okay, yeah. So the next thing on the agenda would be the educational study tour. I guess one thing I'm going to say is that I hope we can move forward with patient grace and patience. I was talking to some youth at Advancing Leadership Youth this weekend or this week, and they were asking about, do you ever get nervous when you speak in public? And I said, oh, no. After a while, you just do what you do. And I'm just going to say I'll take it all back. And so I hope that you'll move forward with me, and I have supporters on all sides. And if I make a mistake, I'm just going to apologize in advance and know it's a learning experience for all of us. So that being said, Superintendent New, would you like to start off the presentation on our educational study tour?
I would. Thank you, Madam President. And can everybody hear me over the speaker system in the back? We're okay. Welcome to the ESC, our temporary home for this meeting on October 29th. We'll be here again at 6 p.m. on the 29th of October. For those of you who are not familiar with this facility and need to use a restroom facility or drinking fountains, they're out in the main lobby where you came in. And if you just kind of follow the hallway around, you'll find both the men's and the women's facilities on your left. So with that, I'd also like to thank Chris Poppich for putting tonight together. I think it looks very nice in here, very board official. And also want to thank Jason Brown and John Peck for providing video and audio services. And that we will be posting this on Channel 21 as of tomorrow, I believe. it'll be ready to go. So it will be on the local television station. So with that, you have two video screens that you have access to on the west wall and the north wall. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Global Learning Initiative that we've all heard so much about. And I really want to thank everyone for being here and having this opportunity to talk about our Global Learning Initiative. So with that, I have really good news. Kind of the rest of the story, if you will. Federal Way Public Schools was just recently named to serve with or collaborate with 100 schools in the United States. All 37 of our comprehensive schools will make up 37% of 100 schools in the United States that will be working in partnership with Dr. Michael Fullan, university professor in Toronto, and arguably the most respected author, researcher, international educator today. In addition, we will be joining 9 other countries and 100 schools from each of those countries as we work together to discover, scale up best practices that ensures successful learning for every student who deserves it, regardless of where they live, what country they live in, what language they speak. And Federal Way Public Schools has the opportunity to lead this work internationally. Congratulations to this board for having the courage to put us in this position, the leadership team for the work that you've done the last couple months to pull this together, and I look forward to bringing updates to the community as we work not only with our colleagues, students, staff around the world, but we also are in partnership with Microsoft, Intel, Promethean, and other corporate giants. So with that, the Board of Education 4 years ago passed end statements under policy governance, and the first end statement reads that each student will graduate with the skills and academic knowledge to succeed as a responsible, contributing member of a global society. Now, I'm glad we have 2 screens and they're big enough, and I hope you can read what's on the screens. This is a book that was authored by Gary Marks called 16 Trends of Profound Impact on Our Future in 2006. And of the 16 trends, I'd like to read to you these trends. For the first time in history, the old will outnumber the young. Majorities will become minorities, creating ongoing challenges for social cohesion. Social and intellectual capital will become the economic drivers, intensifying the competition for well-educated people. As nations vie for understanding and respect in an interdependent world, international learning, including diplomatic skills, will become basic. Pressure will grow for jobs that do not currently exist. Understanding will grow that sustained poverty is expensive, debilitating, and unsettling. And release of human ingenuity will become a primary responsibility of education and society. That lays the backdrop for what I believe are the basic skills that our children today absolutely need to have if they're going to be that graduate that's ready to contribute to in a global society. And that is higher level problem solving, collaborative, and communication skills. They need to understand, tolerate cultural differences, and they need to understand and tolerate multiple generations. They need to speak at least 2, if not 3 languages, and that's never become more obvious to me than in my recent travels. And they absolutely must possess culturally diverse communication skills. They must understand other cultures. Our economy here in the state of Washington is based on international trade, 40% of all jobs. We know that Boeing is an international country or company with distribution chains in 79 countries around the world. 85% of their planes are shipped internationally. The one that still surprises me is our farmers. And they are an annual export of $8 billion a year. I guess that's redundant, annual in a year, isn't it? In the Washington state economy, according to a study in 2010 called the State New Economies Index Benchmarking Economic Transformation in the States, the Information Technology Innovation Foundation is the one that authored this. says that we are second in the country in these new economy skills, which are knowledge-based, global, entrepreneurial, and innovation-based. And yet, today, 25,000 jobs, high-tech jobs, are unfilled. Projections suggest that in 4 years, 45,000 of our jobs in this state requiring those skills that our students have to possess are going to go unfilled. And you may have seen a recent article that came out in the Times, USA Today, Washington Post, and I'll read it. A first ever international comparison of the labor force in 23 industrialized nations shows that Americans ages 16 to 65, I think most of us in this room fall in that category, fall below international averages in basic problem-solving, reading, and math skills, with gaps between the more and less educated in the United States larger than any other country. And we all know that if you look at this slide, the manufacturing jobs that those gaps used to fill have primarily disappeared. What you're now looking at is a slide that was produced based on the 2009 PISA results, which are the results that all the international comparisons are done. And that's where you hear the media and the politicians saying that we are doing so poorly in America. But according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, the countries represented with the high red bars to the left and then decreasing to the right are the highest performing academic countries, starting with Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Finland. On this particular graph, you'll find the United States to be sixth from last, if you will, or to the right. But you'll also notice the blue bars representing creative and entrepreneurial capability. What this information suggests, what this study suggests, is that high academic performance does not result in a creative population, an innovative population. And so what we have now is this incredible game of the tiger chasing its tail, if you will. Everyone's trying to learn from everybody else, all over the world. But now, if you're like me, Mom and Dad, sitting in the audience tonight, and your ultimate goal is that our children graduate with the skills to be successful and can move out and not come back, the next set of slides are going to unsettle you. 53% of our current college graduates are un or underemployed. And this problem, I'm not going to read these slides, read slides to you all night long, is a worldwide issue. These are headlines from around the globe. This number that you're now looking at is actually low. But according to this information that I have, $875 billion is now owed by American college graduates in college debt, surpassing our credit card debt. So what does this mean? That we no longer, I believe, we no longer should be just using test scores to measure our success, and we certainly shouldn't be doing it to compare our schools, our kids, our countries. Instead, we need to identify new competency skills, and these are the ones offered by Dr. Yang Zhao, an expert in international education that now works out of the University of Oregon. But also add this quote from Greg Roberts, Language Immersion Specialist with Utah State Office of Education. Utah State is leading the country in dual language immersion in their schools. Monolingualism is the illiteracy of the 21st century. So our Global Learning Initiative. The objectives of the initiative are first and foremost to learn from our international educators. We have got to do better in Federal Way, in Washington State, in the United States, and why not learn from those around the globe? In doing so, develop international partners, sister schools where we can share resources, learn and grow together. I would love to see every student in Federal Way have the opportunity to study abroad. I would love to see every staff member in Federal Way have the opportunity to teach and learn and share with their partners around the world. and to study abroad, teach abroad. We can develop alternative revenue streams. You know, I hear a lot about educators complaining we don't have enough money. You've never heard that from me. What you've heard is some head scratching over what's going on in Olympia. But we do have enough money, we do have enough money if we allocate our resources properly and appropriately. But more importantly, we are not going to cut our way to any prosperity anytime soon. We've got to find ways to develop alternative revenue streams. We have to be edupreneur. And we can bring international students here, and we can develop a revenue stream that will offset our budgetary situation. In addition, as you know, we speak at least 130 different languages in this community. We are an international community, and we need to capitalize on our assets. So 5 years from now, I would love to see that we have 100 students from around the world here studying with us, enriching our lives, learning with us, growing with us. In doing so, I think we can generate $1 million annually in revenue that will self-fund this global initiative work and will fund student and staff exchanges. I want every school in the Federal Way to have a sister school relationship globally. In fact, I'd love to see every teacher have a sister teacher relationship. Every classroom have a sister classroom relationship with educators and students around the world. And that 5 years from now, I would love to see every one of our elementary schools be a dual language school. Right now, Sunnycrest Elementary is a shining example of students learning English and Spanish every day. And I will tell you that for those of us who are sitting here tonight and thinking as adults, me included, that I only know one language and I've done just fine, my kids will be just fine, you're mistaken. Everyone around the world is speaking multiple languages. The joke is if you know 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you know 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you know 1, you're American. So year 1, we're in, and we're learning from our international educators by the trips that we're now taking and which has become part of our controversy. We are developing international partners, I'll show you the list in just a minute, and developing sister schools. Next year, I hope to bring in our first group of host international students and begin staff exchanges. In fact, we're working on some staff exchanges right now. Hopefully we can get some staff exchanges going this year, just 2 weeks at a time to start. And as you know, last year, we were leaders in the area by hosting the We Day launch with Pete Carroll, Coach Carroll, Richard Sherman, partners from Microsoft, other leaders from around the state, and getting our students involved in local and global community service acts. Would love to see our students have the opportunity to travel abroad and help solve a problem, bringing clean water to a village in Africa, building a school where kids don't have an opportunity to go to school. What a great learning experience for our students. And year 3 is to begin to implement this dual immersion in our elementary schools. This is a list, I'm going to go quickly, of our global school partner, our initial sister school relationships. These are schools in China, schools in Australia, school in New Zealand, Finland, and England. We have many more lined up in China. We have several that we're working on in Australia right now, and a couple in Scotland to add to the list. I started this little presentation talking about Michael Fullen. And here's the statistics of what you can expect that's just about to be announced, and we're just getting underway working with these partners around the world. So 19 countries have demonstrated interest in joining this project, this initiative, this collaborative. So far, this is the list of countries that have completed the application process and been accepted. United States, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Colombia, Senegal, Uruguay, and England and Scotland. By no mistake. This is a groundbreaking global education initiative designed to transform educational systems worldwide and to ensure learning for all of our students, because every student on this planet deserves nothing less. So with that, I'd now like to turn it over to the board.
Okay. I think what's going to happen next is that each of us is just going to give a little bit of a frame about the global initiative and a little bit about how our learning and our trip fits with that. Then we'll have time for public comment. And then after superintendent comments, then you'll have school board comments again, where each of us probably will go a little bit deeper into what we actually saw and what we think our next steps are from our trip and from our experience. So we want to make sure we have enough time for comments, and in order to do that, this is focused on the global initiative, and we'll put some of our thoughts in there, but then also we'll have more at the end. So with that, I think that I'm going to start, and then I will pass it along. And I wrote notes down because there was a lot to learn and a lot to see and a lot to do. But I think I first just want to say that, to me, the global initiative is about having an opportunity for every one of our kids to be successful. And as a parent and as a community member, it's important for each student to know that they can leave school and not be placed in a track or placed in a position, but to have some choice about what that might be. And for some, they may choose to stay in Federal Way and have a job, and they will be ready and they will be successful. For others, they may decide that they want to travel abroad, and they will be ready and they will be successful because of what we have done in order to get them ready for that in their job choice. We want all of our children to be competent. We want them all to be successful. We want them all to have opportunity, and that's what this global initiative is about. It's also a foundational skill, and Superintendent New mentioned, what school may have looked like for us, and we know that reading is important, and writing is important, and math is important, but we also know that this initiative and being able to be competitive in a global society is another foundational piece of the work we need to do. And we wouldn't be doing ourselves we wouldn't do ourselves justice, we wouldn't be doing students justice, nor would we be doing you justice if we did not see this as something that's critically important in order for our kids to be successful. It's about giving them skills to succeed in a global world. And it's not just about having the opportunity to be an English language learner or to come to be bilingual. It's also providing opportunity for students who are English language as their home language to have an opportunity to gain other languages as well so they can be dual language. And I think the other piece about the global initiative that Superintendent New mentioned too was the idea of partnerships. And although there's much to be learned by watching a video or reading a paper or watching a webinar, we know that our best work is done by creating relationships. And what we were able to do and what we were able to continue to set up for our students and for our staff is opportunities for those relationships to build into things like exchanges and partnerships and exposures that many of our students may never have. It also provides us opportunity to think about how we're using our blended learning and our technology to its fullest extent. And again, we can do pieces of that long distance, but part of this is the culture and being able to step in and be part of an experience that you can't read or you can't experience in a book. I think in the last part is that as a school director, I think my job is to create a landscape and an opportunity and open doors for the work to happen and for kids to be successful. And developing relationships, and by traveling the way we did, is one of the best ways that we can begin the work. And the work is not over, and the work, as you heard, started 4 years ago. It is just now, I think, coming to a place where there's actually something to feel, something to see, and something to touch. Director Barney? Excuse me.
Let's get this here where it's actually into my mouth, I guess. Actually, I could probably speak loud enough. I think you can all hear me back there. No? Let's get this thing. Now I can put it on top of my notes. Okay, is that better now? Can you hear me back there? Okay? All right. Okay, I think probably one of the biggest things that really opened my eyes when it comes to the travel that we did, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to live out of a suitcase for 3 weeks. It was in no ways fun. But my daughter asked me, she says, Dad, where was this when I was in school? She now wants to be a teacher. She's actually been studying for the last 3 years between Highline and now at Western. She has been offered 2 opportunities now to travel abroad, to learn education systems and cultural ways that they do education. And it was interesting because we talked with one young lady, Emma, in Finland. She's already had 2 opportunities. She hasn't started teaching yet. She's had taken 2 opportunities to go to other countries, and she's got a 3rd one coming up. She's going over to Australia even before she begins to teach. She wants to become a teacher. And the interesting thing is, it's not necessarily just to go to the country. She wants to go because she wants to learn what the education system is in Australia, in the United States, and how she can improve her teaching ability to reach those children. One principal that we spoke with, I believe it was in London, he had served in the military. He became the principal of this school that was 60% Muslim. There was some turmoil in the school before he became the principal because they knew, or he had mentioned to them, that he understood what they were going through. He had been there. He lived there for about 6 months. They accepted him, and therefore the entire system of the school changed. They began to accept the programs that were being taught and understand more what they were trying to be taught. So parents accepted, the students were more accepting. I can go and talk about all the different experiences that we had, but I think the biggest thing is the kids in one Scotland school, 70% unemployment between the families that were there in that school. 25% may go to college. Breaking the chain of unemployment is going to be very difficult for them. But they're teaching them the core competencies. They will know what they need to know when the economy changes and jobs become available. They will be able to step into those jobs that companies such as Boeing, as DHL, other international companies begin to open up in their area, that they will be able to have the confidence to be able to take those jobs and work there within their country and understand that it is an international company. They need to be able to work not against the students here, but with the students that we will producing, because we know that every one of our kids, when we send them through the public school system, we want them to have a job that they can survive on, so that ultimately they will move out of our house and not move back in, as I've had the opportunity in and out, the open door policy at my house. My kids need help. I'm going to help them. But I also want them to have the ability to get that job that they want. This global initiative will teach them not only the competencies that they need to know, the basics, math, reading, science, history. It's all great. They do have to have that as their core. But being able to understand what goes on in other countries as they begin to work with those countries is going to put them one step ahead of a lot of other students who are vying for those positions. My children keep asking me, where was this when I was in school? Where was my opportunity? They may get it as they continue on in their education, because ultimately I've got 2 that want to be teachers. We'll see how that works out. And now with this, I'll turn it over to Angela.
Okay. Director Griffin.
Thank you. So I would like to share, thank you, share that when we did our travel, there were 16 of us, and the majority of our group that was with us was from Australia. And so we had several frames of references when we were touring all these schools every day, and then coming back at the end of our tours and having our debriefing conversations about what we had learned and what we had taken away. So I'll share what the frame of references that we had from individuals traveling with us. We had equity. I was the only person of color that was traveling with this group, and that lens was what I used in viewing schools and talking to educators, talking to students, viewing the curriculum, what children were learning, the environments of learning. We had an early learning frame of reference. We had standardized testing. All of us were, looking at the system in comparison to standardized testing, family engagement, teacher quality, administrative leadership, government influence, community involvement, learning standards and learning expectations, professional development, primary versus secondary. And because the majority of the schools that we visited were more lower class, poverty-stricken schools and communities, high levels of immigration and diversity, we had that perspective we brought that perspective as well. Ed alluded to the intensity of our travels. We arrived in Finland on a Wednesday evening, and Thursday morning we were up at schools. And we went like that every day. Weekends we were traveling to another country to then get up on Monday and visit schools. The Friday before we left on a Saturday, that Friday, we were out at schools until 4:00 p.m. packing up and heading out in the morning on the plane. So it was very intense learning, a very intense learning experience, again, with the frames of references that I shared. We learned that the countries that we visited, there was a high respect for the profession of teaching, and that because of that high respect, that they provide high levels of teacher training. Teachers are educated and practice for 5 years before they even go into the classroom. And then once they go into the classroom, they are highly regarded and respected as professionals in their field, and the trust level is very high, and for their pedagogy and their ability and desire to train up students. There's a high focus on immigration in those countries, and a value on students coming from other countries and embracing their home languages and the culture that they bring into those communities, and then being able to teach them what they should learn in those countries. The class size was something that really stood out for us. They actually have larger class sizes in elementary schools, 25 to 30 students, and lower class sizes in the secondary schools, anywhere from 20 to 25, to provide an intenser level of academic skill building and preparation for college and career with their secondary students. They invest time to get to know each student and their family. The schools that we visited, they talked about by the end of the first month, they know everything that they could possibly know about every student, every family, the learning needs, and how to engage the family in the learning environment, their visiting homes, which, we do that work as well. The standardized testing that we learned about the national test that's done, and the national test that's done in 9th grade, which is unanimous. So students take this test in 9th grade, and then the results come back in the form of data that drives pedagogy and drives learning. It's not whether or not a student failed the test or passed the test or got a certain score. It was, are our 3rd grade girls able to do fractions? And if they're not, what are we going to do about it? So a very general outlook on what students need to know and how, and using the data to inform pedagogy. And then they talked a lot about that students do not fail, that systems fail students. And that's an approach that was woven throughout the fabric of the education, that if our students aren't successful, then there must be something that we as educators, professionals in this field are not doing to make sure that they are successful. There's a focus on equality for all students, and that all students are taught to and expected to get to a certain level of achievement, regardless of whether or not they have special education needs, whether their family is poor, whether they come from a single-parent household, they don't speak the language. All of the students are expected to get to a certain level academically, and that level is that they are prepared to either go into college or go directly into a career after they finish. The language learning was very intense, and every student learns, every student is trilingual by the time they get to second grade, and when they get into the fourth grade, they can start choosing to be fluent in other languages all the way up to through their graduation. Many students are leaving high school fluent in 7 to 8 different languages. And then after ninth grade, the students can go on to 10th grade if they're not performing well. If they are, then they have a choice of going into a college preparatory program or a career or vocational preparatory program. 60% of their students go into college preparatory, whereas 40% go into career preparatory. So there were a lot of highlights that stood out for me. Another big highlight for me was the relationships with other countries, and we talked about, we heard Superintendent New talk about the relationships that we're building with other countries, but there isn't a question about that. That's the norm. The norm is that administrators, teachers, students annually visit other countries. That's part of their education. When we were visiting schools, we asked students, have you been to another country? And kids, little kids, were saying, yeah, I've been to Australia, and yeah, I've been to Africa, and yeah, and it was part of the culture in other countries. And, we had a discussion, Claire and I had a discussion, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but, we talked about in Federal Way, well, not in Federal Way, but in society, period, there are people who get to travel. They take vacations and they travel to other countries. And so I know that that's a perspective that people have, that, when you go to another country, you must be on a vacation. Well, we have a lot of kids and families and people who do not take those types of vacations. And we have cultures in America that don't see the value of sending their children overseas, and people that don't see the value, and there's a focus on what we're doing here and what we're doing now, but we want in Federal Way to create a different value system. There's a big world out there to explore beyond the borders of Federal Way. And we want our students to be able to go out and explore that big world and decide if they want to work in another country or go to college in another country or marry somebody from another country, if they want to help out in other countries and but to be able just to explore the world that exists out there. And I believe that that's a large focus of the work that we're doing with this global education initiative. And I'm excited. And I'll share, there was a principal that shared this philosophy that really resonated with me when he shared this. And so I will share this publicly as well. He said everyone, and this was a school where when he took over the school was failing. And he came on board with his initiatives to bring the school up and actually turn the school around in 2 years. And I, we asked, how did you do that? What, stood out for you? And he said, his philosophy is that everyone on this ship needs to pick up their oar and row like your life depends on it for our children. And if you don't like the direction we are going, then there are other ships that are going other places. And it was that philosophy that he shared with his education staff, his teachers and his administration around turning that school around for kids, because we're here for kids. We're not here for the adults. And we're here to make sure kids are academically successful and well-rounded and being able to teach to the whole child. And so, it's important that we keep that perspective in what we're doing. And that's all I'll share for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we'll have some time at the end. There's always, I should have said that, or I should have said that. But clearly, I think we did clearly have different focus and lenses to look at. And we haven't even touched on flexible learning spaces and differentiated learning. And we haven't touched on there's some kind of mantras and things that they think about, and they think about things like mind the gap and get it right for every child. And they can articulate what that means. And it's about systems, and it's about making sure our children are at the center. And it's about looking at children for who they are and what they bring, and not seeing any of it as anything other than who they are and what they bring. If you had to put a weight onto 10 things that would describe a child, none of those things are any less equal than the other. That child comes as a child, and we have to look at an incredible whole child focus. Another piece was they could walk both sides of the street well. And when they said that, there's something called Ofsted, which is the national standards. And we have national standards as well. But we kept walking around and saying, how can you do that? And how come you still get rated outstanding in Ofsted? It's because we walk both sides of the street well. It is now time for public comment. And this is a little different than our normal setup. So, and we have more public comment sometimes than we have. So just for people who've never done public comment before, and I have a question while I'm giving direction, it's right over there, and there's a microphone. And my question is, how do we, there we go. So everyone has 3 minutes for public comment. And Ms. Poppich over there has got the timers. So normally there's a button if we're across the way, but there is no red light, green light. So you'll hear the timer ring. And I want to make sure you also understand that the board will hear all public comment and then go through with the superintendent comments, and then our comments are after that. So just to make sure people know that that's just the regular order of how our board meetings work. All right. So with that, I'd like to call up Donna Metz.
Hello, my name is Donna Metz. My grandson attends Sacagawea Middle School. I want to comment on Angela Davis coming to speak as a guest at the Federal Way Public Schools and its tax-paying residents for the kickoff of the district's intercultural speaker series this year. This guest is only the third woman ever to earn a spot on the FBI's Most Wanted list. She was also known as a radical feminist activist, a member of the Communist Party USA, and an associate of the Black Panther Party. This radical resume and background makes her someone we should not be bringing here to increase awareness of and deepen knowledge of cultural competency or deepen relationships with our students, parents, and teachers. Ms. Davis is, of course, free to speak at any public event, air her views, and have the public at large pay for her event. However, I don't think it's right for taxpayers to be paying and promoting such an event. With the times being so tight financially right now, why go outside the Seattle Olympia area or even outside Washington State to pay for someone? Are there no other qualified celebrities or experts who could come in to speak as effectively and knowledgeably? I will gladly participate on any future committees involved with guest speaker selection to ensure the best candidates are recruited. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Michael Scuderi. Would that be if they wrote contracts, right? Okay.
Good evening, school board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on standards-based grading. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to go real fast. I'm going to give you the bottom line up front. I've been analyzing the growth trend algorithm and the rubrics for the priority standards, and this is what I found. The Power Law penalizes consistent learners. It benefits students to fail the first assessment. That's right, fail. Rubrics and assessments require perfection. The 4-point ordinal scale is too coarse for accurate assessment of student progress. The Federal Way School District has not effectively communicated the grading system change, and the calculation of grades is not transparent and understandable. As you know, the growth trend algorithm is based on the work of Robert J. Manzano. Here's the algorithm, very understandable as you can see there. And another important thing is that this algorithm doesn't give a score that, it gives a prediction. It's not an actual score, a prediction. And so I have some examples here. I'm going to give you 3 examples. We have 4 assessments and a final score listed. For the first one here, we have a 3, 4, 4, and 3, and the final score is a 4. If that first score is changed to a 4, the final score becomes a 3. Why is that? Second example, here's a typical growth sequence, 2, 3, 3, 4, final score of 4. If you change the first score to a 4, the final score is a 3. I thought we were giving credit for the last score. It doesn't look like it here. And finally, we have this example here, which I haven't even been able to figure out. You get a 1 to begin with, and a 4, 3, 3, and you end up with a 4. Somebody needs to explain this to parents as to why this is going to occur with this new growth trend algorithm. It's not clear. Another question is about the assessment, the values used for the assessments. Marzano himself has stated that you should be looking at increments of 0.5 or 0.25, not the whole numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. In addition, there's no room for errors when only a few questions are used to assess a priority standard. In addition, the rubrics for algebra and geometry demand perfection, no errors for level 4. And you can see right there under the 4 rubric, no errors. And teachers are following through on that because they have no choice. So, takeaways. The system needs to be understandable to parents and students. It's not right now. The system should not penalize consistent learners. Failing the first test significantly helps a student to get a better grade. Failing. Why is that? The course grading scale and strict rubrics limit the student's potential to really show what they know. Rubrics need to be changed to eliminate the perfection requirement. I think we need to have a real open public forum about this, not the particular, I went to the Federal Way High School explanation of standards-based grading, and it was lacking in terms of detail and showing examples, and we need to have that type of information presented to us so we can understand what our students are being asked to do. And I don't think the growth trend is working out exactly as is planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Kuhn? Did I do it right? I'm sorry if I... Oh, thank you. Good evening. You dropped your wallet. You dropped your wallet there. I don't want you to...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to address the $80,000 plus spent by the school board for traveling. I feel that at the current time when teacher aides hours have been cut, specialists such as nurses, counselors are at half-time at many of our schools. Kindergarten teacher aides have been entirely eliminated. And those are just a couple of examples since I only have 3 minutes. Spending $80,000 plus traveling by the school board is totally unacceptable. It is my opinion that the board members who traveled should reimburse the school system for the expense of the travel. Or resign. Spending public money on these trips is unacceptable. The superintendent made a comment tonight that there is plenty of money. All we have to do is reallocate that money. So I'm very glad to hear that, because as a taxpayer, please don't ever ask me again to pay for anything for the school again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bill Nyland? Excuse me?
Kind of hurts. I was hoping to show you my son's grades online and show you some of the problems we're having with it this time. The first thing is the assignments and the assessments, if they have multiple on them, in the score, it says not graded. Well, of course, they've been graded. If you click on them, you can find the grades, but it's very difficult to see on your assignment view. If every single assignment says not graded, it's not working. So the second thing is, a lot of the teachers put in not for graded, so homework assignments. If they put those in there, you cannot see, if you're a parent or if you're a student, if you've turned it in or not. All not for graded, they're in in there, but they don't, you can't figure it out. No matter how many times you click and get far in there, so kind of stuck on that. The third thing is the weighting formulas. Michael kind of explained that. I have an example here of one learning target with 3 assessments on it. One of them was homework. 2 of them were assessments. The homework one, my son got a 1 on, although we're going to get that fixed. But the assessments was a 2 and a 3. The overall grade for that is a 1 because the homework was the 3rd one, which gives the most weight. The teacher put the wrong date for the homework. They haven't figured this out yet. Does that make sense? So 1, 2, and 3, the 3rd one is the most powerful one. Well, yeah, he did the homework first, then he did the assessments, but it's not working out. I really like the calendar that's on here. If you look at the calendar, it's actually supposed to show the grades on there, but it can't show the grades because there's more than one standard on each one of those. So it won't show because almost all the teachers are trying to put multiple learning targets onto each one of these grades. So it's kind of blank. And it's supposed to show everything out in the future, but of course most teachers aren't going that far out. So I've got my sons and it does not have anything besides from today. So we're going that way. Since I can't show you this stuff, I'd also make one more comment. I'm very excited about this international stuff. I believe it was a great use of money to get you guys to the aha moment that we need to think about international. My son, when he was a sophomore, he went to TJ and said, "Hey, can I study abroad?" The counselors, the Career Center, well, no, we've never had anybody do that, and we're an international baccalaureate school. If you do that, you cannot get an IB diploma. I said, well, wait a sec, this is an international baccalaureate. Can't we just trade with one of those international baccalaureate programs in Paris? You know, we can trade? No, and they had never figured out how to do that. So he had to make a choice. Do I want an IB diploma or do I want to, go travel abroad? So we lost out on that, but hopefully my second son will have another chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nyland, can I please, right here. Can I have those documents? And I apologize, we didn't have an Elmo.
Thank you. Paul Levy?
Thank you. Our well-traveled superintendent and board members have racked up about $100,000 in European and Asian travel expenses this year. These monies were and are being expended in support of a program called the Global Learning Initiative. This year's budget is $250,000. Ostensibly, this program is intended to prepare our students for participation in international opportunities. But I am left with the nagging feeling that the only ones to benefit from these junkets are the superintendent and board members who got to see the world on the taxpayer's dime. Let me be clear. The educational systems in Finland, China, Australia, and Scotland should be well known to anyone who is capable of reading. Educational methodologies and philosophies have been discussed to death in academic journals, in serious journalism, in the popular press, and books. Have our board members unearthed any new nuggets missed by serious academic investigators? So far, all I have heard is a series of self-justifying platitudes. Pompous phrases do not substitute for substance. Superintendent New justified the Global Learning Initiative by claiming that students, quote, must be prepared to speak several world languages and to employ culturally diverse communication skills, unquote. Perhaps the superintendent and board members are not aware that English is the international language, and too many of our students are functionally illiterate in English. On September 27th, I demanded, pursuant to Washington state law, public records consisting of written reports, notes, meeting logs, and expense vouchers associated with the Global Learning Initiative. Thus far, I have received nothing. The sad fact is that our schools are mediocre. Performance on standardized testing is horrendous, and judging by the 2012-2013 OSPI report card, they are deteriorating. Nevertheless, Superintendent New has been rewarded with a 22% raise. We stakeholders are not stupid. We recognize the problems, and we know that the solutions do not involve international junkets. We know that students learn better when the ratio of teachers to students is high. We know that students learn better when they are adequately fed and housed. And we know that students learn better when their teachers are held in high esteem by the community. We also know that students learn when they believe that education leads to a better life. We know that students perform better when parents are actively engaged in the educational process. Unfortunately, there is a widening economic gap in this country, and to make matters worse, economic data show that social mobility has been decreasing. We must confront the general sense of economic despair that leads to devaluing education. If our children and their parents don't believe education is worthwhile, all of the trips to China and Finland won't help. Not every student is cut out to be a nuclear physicist, but every student should emerge with a marketable skill. Minimally, we need to have a robust vocational system. Unfortunately, by participating in these dubious trips, the board has demonstrated a betrayal of our community. While rescinding the $250,000 annual GLI budget and a clawback of a $40,000 raise is insufficient to solve our problems, they would at least symbolically demonstrate that the board is cognizant of our community's real needs.
Mr. Levy, I'm sorry, but the timer went off.
All of you need to resign.
Thank you. Len England, please.
Good evening, President Wilson, Vice President Griffith, directors. Superintendent New, Deputy Superintendent Davidson. Boy, tonight is quite a night, isn't it? First off, I wanted to talk about the Intercultural Speakers series, but I wanted to make just a couple of comments first on the educational study tour. I think you guys are doing a good job on this. I applaud your leadership. This is an area where we really need to be a global leader, I think, in education. And I think it's very brave of you to do this, to make these steps. Director Moore, I think you're very brave for doing what you did tonight and taking the leadership role in this and directing our superintendent to make these steps. And directors, you all too are to be applauded for that. Moving on to the and also as commissioner at Lake Haven Utility District, as one commissioner, I would be happy to entertain any kind of vocational relationship with the Federal Way School District. I think we already have one, but we can certainly intensify that too. Do we have scientists at Lake Haven? You bet. We have chemists. We have lab technicians. We have engineers. 100 people there that make their living there. Anyway, let me move on to the intercultural speakers. There's a lot of comments on the Federal Way News, the Federal Way Mirrors publicity page for these for the speakers, and none of them are really very good. It seems like looks like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot on this one, and I would really suggest that maybe you find another speaker other than Angela Davis. But having said that, I always want to come with some suggestions. Couple of people that when we're talking about intercultural speakers and diversity, I think it's a wide range. It's a very broad subject. So get some people that are maybe a little bit, that are not really so well known, but known. A couple of people that come to mind is Mia Love, who's mayor of Saratoga Springs, Utah. Wayne Perryman, he's a local historian. I don't think he even charges to come. We have a whole ton of local and government officials, that would be happy to share, civics and how laws work and how that, all that whole process, which is really part of the school system as well. And then lastly, there are a number of people, and I'll put myself in this little minority that are married out of our culture and out of our race, and we have progeny and children that are interracial, and those people are. I hear the timer. Yeah. Let me just finish up, and I'll be done. Those people, I think, are part of our diversity as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Kelly Tanner.
Hello. I just jotted down a couple of thoughts, and most of it is focused on the global learning initiative that you guys have proposed. Initially, I have to say that when I heard the number of the travel, the amount on the travel, I had a little sticker shock situation. But as opposed to going where I find disappointment in how some community members have reacted and the media has reacted, I've actually gone in and asked the questions and said, how was that money spent? So now that I have a better understanding on that, I have gotten past that, and I want to talk about accountability as far as the program is concerned. I really truly believe that global initiatives and global learning are important for our kids today. I think that it is. People like to talk about an either or. There's the Common Core and then this. But to me, I think the way that we're looking at the future, they have to be intertwined. But my questions to you as we go forward on this is the accountability of what exactly is the program? Have you taken this knowledge, and how is it going to change and really shape the program that you want to initiate? What are the goals? How are we going to have some concrete resolutions that come out of it? What do the kids learn? And also professional development, because I think, you talked about a little bit about today, but what do the teachers and the educators learn from this, and how can that result in providing benefits to students? Who is it available to? I would like to make sure that, I have a mentee at Federal Way High School. She is what some would deem as an at-risk student. She would like to go to Africa and build a hospital, where she's talking about, and she struggles with English, but if she was available to come back and look at a program where she could implement not only global ideas from business, language, cultural, and allow her to achieve this, I think it would give her a better focus in what she does in school. But I don't know, she's not in a financial position to afford any global travel or initiative. So my question is this a program for really, truly for everyone? And then, again, I go back to, I want this program to support the idea that it's going to provide our children opportunity and choices. I'm not one that believes that kids have to choose a course, either college ready or career ready. I want them to come to the end of their program and their time with the school district and say, I have a choice, and I will continue to have choices as I go on through my life, and not that I just get to college, and that tends to be the end result. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. John McIntosh?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a 9-year-old daughter with a very strong sense of justice, and she came into the kitchen the other day very upset. And she said she had seen a sign that said, "Skip Priest for mayor." And she wanted to know what kind of a person would campaign against a man who wanted to be mayor. Why should we all skip him? I had to take her back to the sign, and in smaller lettering right above it, it said, "Re-elect." What you don't see can radically affect your opinion of what's right before you. And even when we expect someone to see something, they can still miss it, as she did. When the district first began to introduce and have conversations about standard-based education, I was very resistant. I was not happy about it, didn't want it to change, don't like change. Sought out people in the district and asked that question, what am I not seeing? They were able to show me. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm seeing both of my children flourish. Right now, you have the community's attention. You may not like it, you may not be happy about how you got it, but you have a unique opportunity to show us what we're not seeing. I would encourage you, as you hear people who are frustrated, people who are angry, not to knuckle down and just wait until this all blows over. It's not going to blow over. I would encourage you to take every opportunity to find a way to tell our community what we're missing. What are we not seeing? What do we not know that you know? I think that's a very important part of seeing your strategy come to fruition. I'm very grateful for your service, for your leadership, for the fact that you are forward-thinking and taking risks, but we need to know why. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Wertinger? Did I do it justice, or was I okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just had some questions that I wanted justification for. The trips, all my questions have actually been asked already. Why aren't the teachers going? They're the ones that's going to be teaching and learning. They need to know how it works overseas. You know, the board members, who are all these people that went? Where do we find this information out? You know, those are basically my questions. The fundings, the raises, you know, the people that need jobs are getting laid off, not laid off, but their jobs are going away because the money's supposedly not there. We were just told the money is there. We're not seeing it. So we need to know these things. It needs to be out there for us to see. And those are basically all I had to say.
Thank you. Andrea Thiederman. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening, Superintendent New, President Moore, and board members. I am so flabbergasted by the events that have taken place in the last 2 to 3 months. I don't know where to begin. So I will begin with being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. First and foremost, the idea of anyone receiving a raise over 22% is absurd. $42,000 annually in a raise is absurd when the results that have been produced since Mr. New has become superintendent are dismal. Let's look at our evaluation criteria that would support a raise of this magnitude. Student achievement is down in reviewing our AMO annual measurable objectives for 2012-2013. We received below in every category with an overall below rating. This is down from last year where we were on or above our overall rating. Next, we have an overabundance of appointments being made for executive level positions. This means that people don't apply, they are appointed, and avoid the entire hiring process. This does not ensure that we recruit the best of the best for our students or staff. What this perpetuates is nepotism and limited thinking. Additionally, the people who have been appointed do not know how to do the jobs, so we have to appoint the people that retired back to mentor them in their new positions. Wake up, folks. The people that were appointed into these positions are making 6-digit incomes. And six-digit incomes and need mentors to do their job, costing the taxpayers double for one position. Amazingly, the districts surrounding us have been able to recruit highly respected individuals to apply and interview for these positions and do not have to pay double for each position. Last meeting, there were at least 7 positions that people were appointed into. This is an equal opportunity employer? I would say not. Additionally, when people threaten to leave the district because they are being sought out by others, we give them raises. And this is not just with our superintendent. Can we afford to give all staff at least 22% raise to keep them here? I want people who are passionate about their work and not their paycheck. This is a contract year and teachers should expect the same gratuities and raises. Lastly, the whole Global Initiative program. Is there a strategic plan that was developed by the staff and board? Was this presented last year? I'd say not. The announcement yesterday that we are asked to partner in the Global Partnership Program and referenced Michael Full and Maria Langworthy, who wrote a paper outlining an overview of the partnership's goals and the knowledge base that underlines its theory of action, is an attempt to make us think that something wonderful has happened to the district. Clarify that the paper is an invitation to apply to be part of a partnership. Washington State's
Ms.
global
Thier.
initiatives and partnerships are located.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your input. Neil Goldengay. Neil Goldengay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, my name is Neil Goldengay. I'm a 20-year resident of Federal Way. I have 3 kids that went through the Federal Way school system, 2 have graduated and are at Highline, and 1 is currently a sophomore. And I am also a very proud employee of the Federal Way School System, working in nutrition services. I've come here tonight to talk a little bit about the expense being made for your trips to Europe and Asia. I have to admit, I didn't like it, and I didn't like it at all. And there was a lot of money being spent, a lot. And I know it says a small piece of the budget, but I have to admit, when Mr. Moore went through his issues, it completely destroyed any capital gain you expected to get when you're over in Europe. And quite frankly, when I listened to you tonight, you all sounded like you were rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It seemed somewhat desperate to get your point across. You know, it's one way to get a crowd out here tonight is organize a trip to Europe and Asia. I also want to explain to you, my kids have been at TJ for 4 or 5 years now, at least 6 years. For those amount of time, I've been trying to get the gutters, just the gutters, repaired and replaced at TJ. Well, one of the things you missed when you're in Europe is we picked up 6.5 inches of rain in September, which broke the September record by 5 inches. Well, the flooding at TJ was biblical. It needs to be fixed. So when I'm looking at the mess around TJ, and I'm hearing about your reports back from Europe, it's a tough one to wrap my mind around. I also talk a little bit about my parents. My parents are from England, World War II Europe. They came here in 1950, right? Now, it's apples and oranges, but it's an experience that I can compare. And my dad, my mom, from 1936, 37 to 1945, were dealing with being bombed out at the munitions factory where they bet. Well, 5 years later, they're still facing shortages of butter and milk in 1950. You know, and they decided, I think a much better school district for our children to be is over in the United States. And they came over here. And I'm eternally grateful. Things have changed in the last 50 years in Europe, I'm sure, and I appreciate what they have to offer. But when I look around our own school district, we've got, 100 and plus different languages we're speaking? It seems to me you don't need to get on an airplane. You can just get a cab and go visit one of our schools. And my time is up. But I know
Thank you.
I got one last quick set. I ask, look around this room and ask every one of them, can you afford to grab your spouse and your 3 kids and go
Thank
to
you,
Europe?
Mr. Goldengay. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Dan Larson?
Thank you so much. Just a couple of comments. One is former President Tony Moore. I just want to say thank you for your service. We honor you. A man, what I know in my few interactions with you is a man of integrity, character, honorable service, cares passionately for this district. I have 3 teenagers, 2 that have graduated, 1's at Decatur, and I have been proud for you to be our president of this school board. So thank you so much for your service. I honor you. And I want to go on record to say that. Also, I look at our school district. It has challenges, great challenges, and thank you for addressing some of the challenges. I think I'm going to kind of share a little joke that I think will communicate a point. There was a man who cut his hand trimming hedges, and his wife looked at him and said, "You need to get that fixed. You need to get that taken care of." And he said, "It's not so bad." Well, she said, "Let's jump in the car and go to the hospital." So they come, and there's 2 doors, one that says male, one that says female. He goes through the door that says male. one next two doors, one says upper body, one says lower body. So he walks through the door that says upper body. Then there's two more doors that says external injury or internal injury. He walks through the door that says external. Then there's two more doors, serious or not serious. He walks through the door that says not serious. He ends up back in the parking lot. Goes back into the car and his wife says, honey, couldn't they do anything for you? He said, no, but they certainly were organized. And I want to just encourage this board to do something that's highly effective for this community, and not to just organize all kinds of things, but I've been somewhat disappointed at times, and I don't blame the school board for everything. I really don't. I also look at our parents and say, how involved am I? And how involved are the parents of our community? My greatest challenge to parents in this community is get involved. If you don't like something, get involved and help change it. And I know there's many here that are trying to do that. So those are my main comments. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you very much. Agnes Goldengay.
Hi, my name is Agnes Goldengay. I am a mother of three. My husband just spoke a few minutes earlier. I just wanted to be here. Obviously, I haven't been able to attend any of these, but I was compelled to. And really, I know that a lot of the talk is about the money that's spent on the trips for the global. That's one, but I can give you a way of how you can spend that money now. And my husband alluded to that. It's fix the TJ gutters, honestly. I sent an email to the board. I sent it again to every individual board member. It started off in an email right before doing registration at TJ. There was a downpour. I even made it easy for you, sent you a link, updated all the videos of the torrents of water where you can get that, and it's available for the public to see. But really, I was told I wanted an explanation for that, because one of the things I'm worried about is that everybody on the board is drinking the cooler. I don't know. Are they drinking the Kool-Aid? I feel like sometimes our asks fall on deaf ears and we don't get responses timely, or sometimes the responses we get almost are condescending, like we don't know what it means. The explanation that I got from the gutters is that there is no money budgeted. Well, I think I know why. It's because they've been neglected. They have been neglected and they haven't been maintained. I've asked for records about it and I haven't gotten a response. And until I get that, I will continue to go on the weekends on my free time, film all the gutters that have really fallen the wayside. And it really, for me, it's a shame. TJ is one of the touted high schools in the nation. We see it on US Report. We love to say how great it is for academics, but also the kids that go there, they deserve a safe environment, a functional building. Now, granted, we did pass something to rebuild Federal High School, and I appreciate that. They really, really need it. But at the same time, for a high school as TJ that's coveted, we need to kind of put our money where our mouth is and ensure that our kids are, in a safe place where they don't have to skip over puddles, they don't have to slide, they don't see rivers trying to get into the, spill into the classrooms. I mean, it's just one of those things where sometimes I feel like maybe spend more time in the classes, spend more time in the schools, rather than actually going out to other countries. There's a lot that you can actually do just by spending time here. And I know that's words that I can myself give to, because I don't spend as much time there too. But when you hear feedback from your kids who actually go to the schools, they've gone to Valhalla, Totem Middle School, and now TJ. 2 have graduated, 1 is still there. And that's what compels me, because we've actually kept our kids. We never put them in charter schools. We never put them in public or parochial or private schools. And I feel like I at least have that credibility to speak up what my issues are and what I care for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kurt Papard.
Well, since everybody else is talking about the trip to Europe, I wish I could have gone, but I'm glad that it happened. It takes time and effort to build relationships. You know, not just relationships here, but global relationships that will, you know, foster a global thinking attitude amongst our students, right? One that allows them to go even further than what the standard-based testing is asking them to do, because they get that creativity and that ingenuity going on and that desire to really, you know, reach out to other parts of the world, really understand different cultures. So no, I applaud the global initiative, Global Learning Initiative, and I think some members of the audience tonight might be a little bit short-sighted as what it takes to build such an effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent New.
I came a little late. I didn't sign up, but I would like to make a comment.
Can you,
It'll be brief.
go ahead? You're welcome. And before you leave, could you fill out a blue form so we know? Thank you very much.
My name is Joe Hebert. We've lived in Federal Way for about 2 years. We have our kids, but they're all adults, and we don't have anybody in the school system. But I think, my wife and I both think good school systems are a wise thing to have. They help with property values and a lot of other things. I listened to your explanation, and I listened to a lot of the comments, and I'm not so sure that you understand that you have a serious PR problem. The explanations, I don't think were adequate to show that these trips trickle down to students, that the program trickles down to students. If it does, it will trickle down to a very small number of students. And I think when you have a situation where you're talking about money to fix gutters versus money to go to Europe, you're going to have to find better explanations. That's basically all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. And there's a blue form on that chair, if you could just, thank you so much. All right, Superintendent New.
Madam President, and thank you, members of the community, for coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts, your concerns, your hopes, your insights. Just a couple of things that I do want to respond to. I did get a text message that Mr. and Mrs. Goldengate, there's trees that have been removed from TJ or being removed from TJ. Conversations are going on with the vendors to have those gutters repaired. Work should begin soon, and we'll get that report back as soon as possible. So in addition, I wanted to, I didn't catch the name of the last speaker. We have already, because of this work, relationships built, Skyping relationships because of the relationships that have been built, and kids are in conversations with schools across the oceans. We have, in fact, at TJ, we have quite a bit of work going on with Brighton Secondary College, which is actually a high school in Melbourne, Australia. And the goal is that as these relationships unfold and mature, that the kids will engage themselves in learning and projects and work towards collaborating on whatever issues that they decide to. And that's a real important piece of this work, is that as we move forward, we've got to find ways to engage students in areas of their interest. It's not enough just to get them ready for a standardized test. In fact, the other countries, China, Korea, Singapore, the Asian countries are trying to find ways to reduce the pressure on their students and the impact, the negative impact that's having on standardized testing. The European countries basically are looking at us saying, what are you guys doing? You're killing your kids through this process of standardized testing. So when I talk about allocation of funds, I do talk about our own stewardship of our dollars and how we're targeting our students in order to make sure that they're successful. We've got to do a better job of peeling back our layers and stop doing things that aren't having impact on kids, a positive impact on kids. But at the same time, We have to have a conversation in this country about the negative impact on standardized testing and the billions of dollars that are going towards that. And those are lessons to be learned from our counterparts in the European countries. So we also have, out of the money that has been set aside, I think it was Mr. Levy talked about that earlier tonight, we do have money set aside to send kids to Ecuador and Ghana through our Me to We trips through Free the Children relationship that we developed last year. And our goal, and I realize it's a small segment of the population to begin with, but our hope, our goal is that through developing revenue streams and attracting partnerships and sponsorships, that we will bring in funds that will send kids abroad to go to places where they have that interest, where they can broaden their horizons, and understand something, that through those partnerships, through those relationships, through those experiences, we also have this technology that now allows everyone that has a skill that is of value someplace in the world. Then we owe it to our kids to find out where that might be. And we've got to engage our kids. I've said this a million times in front of this board, as obviously an exaggeration. Our graduation rate is unacceptable. And we have got to find better ways, more ways to broaden the curriculum for our kids, to engage them, ensure their success, and ensure their future opportunities. So there's a whole list of things that are going on through this work. What I'm actually going to ask is that Vince Blauser, perhaps Cindy Black, and Randy Kazar report back to the board on the 29th with a more comprehensive list, because right now I feel like we're talking through closure. So I just want to finish with just two thank yous, or a thank you and congratulations. First of all, to Treese Moore for the Parent Summit that she put on at Decatur this weekend. A lot of folks in this room, as well as the staff and board, were in attendance. It was a terrific community event, engaged toward parent engagement and communication and feedback. It was a wonderful event, so thank you to Treese. And also to congratulations for Taft Academy for being awarded a Washington School of Distinction for their improvement over the last 5 years. Congratulations to Principal Paul Teitler, the staff, and the students at Taft Academy. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent New. Now we'll have board comments, and I'm going to start to my left with Director Peterson.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to everybody that came out tonight. And for those of you that made comment and you stuck around to hear the response, I appreciate that. We don't really get to have a conversation a lot of times. It's not a conversation. This is a business meeting. And so comments kind of get ping-ponged back and forth. And the fact that you're still here and it's getting late, I appreciate that. I had some notes written tonight for my board comment, and it's almost like it's going out the window, because I am just I think what we've experienced tonight, at least for me, in my experience, has been I've been very happy to have the participation and people coming and expressing their views tonight. And they've been all over the map. I thought it was maybe going to go a certain way, and just the collection of different things that have been shared tonight, I think is it's good. It's about keeping the board accountable. It's about asking the right questions. It's about finding things. I've heard questions about tonight about Angela Davis, and I'm sure I'd like to hear a report out from the district of why that happened and what was being done with that. I think that would be fantastic. Standards-based grading, some of the issues that we're having with that, where we're at in the process with that. We've heard one side of the story tonight. I appreciate the evidence that's been brought, and I would love to hear the other side, which would be what is the district here, as we continue to pursue this. Finding what is the reality and how can we get about to fixing it. Because obviously what's going on in schools, there's confusion still, there's people scratching their heads, there's parents that aren't having clarity. How can we fix that? As well as in parent view, which is, I know we're going to get a report about that later on this evening, as I see on the agenda. And then, everything from the contract to the gutters to these different things. Thank you for coming and sharing. We want to hear from you as a board, and I'll just comment just briefly tonight on just the global travel. It was great to hear your stories. It was great to hear your report tonight, and I guess my expectation is I didn't go. I didn't go, and I haven't been able to talk to you all. I'm somebody that has been able to travel. I see great value in this initiative moving forward. I see that sometimes we can get caught in old paradigms, and I have 3 children. Today I was holding 2 of them. I took one of them to the park, and I want to see the best for my kids. And I understand that my world is not going to be their world, and that our world is changing drastically all the time. And if we continue to just crank out the same old education, we can increase our graduation rate. But at the end of the day, all we're doing is we're giving kids a diploma. But what does that diploma mean? Does it prepare them for it? I can't tell you how many parents I've had the whole experience of putting their kid through college, getting the degree, and then being in a spot of just scratching their head going, my kid can't find the job. And I have this huge, immense debt right now. And as a school district, we need to be preparing our students for success. We need to be putting them on a launch pad that's going to set them up, that we're not trying to, we're trying to do it in spite of the schools, that we're doing it in parents are doing it in partnership with the schools. And that's what gets me excited about this initiative. Some people talk tonight about the travel, and I think definitely that needs to be held accountable. There needs to be results. This isn't just about about board members going on some trip. This is about it's about getting students on airplanes. It's about getting teachers, having that cross-pollination that happens from going, that sometimes can't even happen with an email or a Skype call. It's about building those relationships, and I'm excited about that future because I believe that that's where our world is going to. It's global, and if we choose to ignore that, our students are going to miss out on being able to be successful. Is my mic off, or can you guys still hear me in the back? Talking okay? Good. I think sometimes the comparison for us can be, what are they doing in Seattle? What are they doing in Tacoma? What are they doing? How do we do better than the next guy right next door? And I definitely know we can learn from our neighbors. But for us as Federal Way Schools, I think we have an opportunity to be a transformational district. That we have an opportunity right now to really push forward and invest and see something that isn't being done anywhere, and to do it well and to see our kids benefit from it. And so for me, it's a unique time. It's a dynamic time where there's conversations happening globally that we can be a part of that nobody else is taking advantage of. Now, we move forward with this, it has to be an accountability. It can't be just some frivolous money spending thing. And for me, that is part of the continued community engagement. That is the continued moving forward of this, of exactly what does it look like in every stage of the way. And obviously we're in a spot where this is just launching, but I'm excited for the future. I know the last board meeting we passed a motion to start a committee that will monitor ENDS 1. I know ENDS 1's coming up in February, I believe, in our monitoring report. And there's been other things that have distracted being able to get that committee launched, but I'd like to see that happen with our board, where we're not just getting what the district's perspective is on how we're doing with this global initiative, but to get your perspective and have you talk about, so that it's, at the end of the day, it's not about a school board member getting on an airplane. It's about our students getting on airplanes. It's about the relationships that are built, and it's the stories of kids getting changed and transformed in their thinking, where all of a sudden it's a global perspective that students in this country just don't have. It's just a lot of times we just get so focused on here and Washington State, and to expand that, I think is the right step for our kids. And thank you tonight for coming out and sharing your comments. My hope is that you feel that you were heard, and that your board is committed to our students' success, that your board is committed to moving forward and looking what's best for our students, for our staff, and the great work that is at hand for Federal Way Schools. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I would also like to say thank you for everyone that came out tonight, that shared. I think it's great that we have community members that are awake, that are aware, that are speaking up, speaking their voice, paying attention. For me, it's unfortunate that we only get these turnouts when there's something contentious or something that people are concerned about, because we're out in the community, out in the public, and we actually hear a lot of great things and also concerns from the community as well. And I would love for more of our community, if people are watching, I'd love for more of our community to come and share some of the successes that they've experienced, some of the positive sides of this work that's being done that they value and they appreciate. And of course, we just continue to enjoy having anyone that wants to come out and speak to the board. It doesn't have to be just here, you sharing for 3 minutes on the microphone. We are available through email. We are available to set up meetings, and we have done that. And we do go out to the schools, and we do visit, and we ask a lot of questions about how this work is being done in our school district, again, with the children as a focus. And I've shared before, everyone on this school board either is a parent of a student that's in the school district now or has been a parent of the school of children that are in the school district. So what we do is intentional. It's not for any of our own personal gain. This is a volunteer position that we came on board with to make sure that the education system in Federal Way is the best education system for every single student. So I just hope that that is clear to our community and that you guys will continue to engage us and hold us accountable as well. Thank you.
Director Barney?
Okay. Mr. Scuderi, you have that PowerPoint presentation. Can we get a copy of that so that we can then use that? He has it? Great. I do have a hard copy. I didn't find it in my stack of paper, but I will look for it. Okay? Because I think that we can respond to that and make that. Yeah. All right. So thank you for that. And I would expect that Mr. Mayberry will then compare that with the data that he already has and see where we might be able to make some changes. As far as vocational opportunities, Mr. England, thank you for, I know we do have some there, but we can also look at moving forward with some of that. And I appreciate the comments about the Global Learning Initiative in that I think the big thing is that I caught was that they want some accountability for this. Where are we going next? And I think that's the next steps that we are going to be putting into place to allow our children, our teachers, to have the experience as they have in Scotland. They've been doing it for 8 years. Kids have been going and providing service and opportunities for their children. So we need to find out what our next steps are. Where do we go from here? And I think that's the discussion that the board will have with Superintendent New to plan ahead, move forward with giving that opportunity, especially to some of our teachers and, as we already have, some of our students that will be traveling. I don't want to negate anything that has been said in contrary to people's concerns, because I do listen. I have 3 pages of notes right here. And I will be bringing up some of these concerns and issues with the respective members of the district. And I'll be asking more questions. This is the grades online. We're going to get a parent preview, some more information on that tonight. But we need to make sure that we can get our buildings up to standard and maintain that standard. And that's one issue that I have constantly asked questions about. We had issues at one of the other schools. We got it fixed. So we know we're working on this issue, and we hope that we will get a report on that very quickly to make sure that those things are taken care of. So I want to thank you for being here this evening.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. You know, Federal Way School District is in partnership with you to help your child be educated. And the decisions that we make on the board are difficult. And our desire is, of course, to lead so that your child grows. The Global Learning Initiative is not new. Let me say that again. The Global Learning Initiative is not new. We actually put it into policy form about 4 years ago. And so where we are today has been an evolution over time. And it's great to have your input, those of you that are here tonight, and we look forward to further conversations. One of the things that I've learned being on a board is that we have all these acronyms that we come up with that nobody really understands. And we go into meetings and we use the acronyms and we hope you understand or get a clear vision of what it is we're trying to achieve. So let me just break down the global initiative as plainly as I can. The global initiative is about your child getting a job. We live in a town where we live in a country where youth unemployment is in the 20% range. We're 5% of the world's population, and the future for your child is helping to develop an underdeveloped world. So we have one of two choices. We can either decide that all we want to do is stay in Federal Way and the surrounding area as jobs continue to go overseas, or we can entertain the idea of reaching beyond into areas that we may be afraid of. Maybe our kids are afraid. We can reach beyond, and we can provide real opportunities for future generations. Now, I'm not saying that every child is going to travel overseas. My hope is that every child in the district that wants to go overseas and investigate an undeveloped world where they might be able to engage their creativity and ingenuity to create a better world for all of us will get that opportunity. I can't say, but I know one thing for certain. We have to begin to open some doors of opportunities for our kids. That's what the Global Learning Initiative is about. We have people that are very excited about it. We're excited about it. Of course, the initial investment is high, and I get that people are concerned about that. But the Global Initiative is really about the future opportunities for your children. And we went over, the board members went to Europe. I was able to go to China. There are real opportunities in other countries. Maybe your child won't have to go because of the internet. But we're looking to open up entrepreneurial and work opportunities for the next generation, and that's really what the Global Initiative is about. Unfortunately, in the setting of a school board, most of what happens is monologue. You talk, then we talk, and we kind of talk at each other. We take notes, you take notes, and then everybody kind of walks away, and we never have that back and forth. My hope is that this conversation is just at the beginning stage. That those of you that are here tonight will add not only your insights in monologue, but you'll also give us constructive criticism through dialogue. We all are here for one reason, and that is to make the world a better place, helping our kids be successful. I have 2 children. My daughter recently graduated from college with honors, and she went out to try to find a job, and she was unable. And so where our original mission as a board was making sure that kids were college ready, our new mission is to make sure that our kids have opportunities well beyond the borders of Federal Way, Washington, and the United States. And I believe that it is what is best not only for the district, but it's best for Federal Way, and really it's what's best for our country. So my hope is that you will stay engaged with us, that you will not take your 3 minutes and go home, but that you'll continue to talk with us and tell us how to shape this program. For me, the Global Initiative will be a success when our children begin to travel. That's a real bullet point that you can hold us accountable for. The Global Initiative, in my mind, will be successful when those children that travel overseas have job opportunities, jobs that they love and that they can do with partners around the globe. The Global Initiative will be a success when we begin to have teachers and administrators travel. All the board has done is open up the door for everyone else to go through. And so my hope is that you will stay with us, that you will keep us accountable to those set of goals, and that you'll help us make Federal Way Public Schools the best school district anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I just have a couple of comments. One is I do appreciate the public comment. I was trying to put them in a stack of themes, and I think I remember the themes. It's easier than trying to actually fit them that way. But clearly, the Global Initiative and the work we're doing in the district is a focus, and it should continue to be a focus. And fortunate or not, it's a great way to engage a broader public in the conversation, and we hope that you will entertain the offer to continue to be part of that. think the second piece we heard about was grades and grades online, and still confusion around standards-based grading, and even the change that came this year as a response to the difficulty in the understanding of the new system last year. So I can expect that we will talk more about that, and even tonight have some more information about that, along with Parent View, which is the new online place for parents to hopefully go get what they need. But if things aren't working, then we need to know about that, and we need to be able to respond and explain and be clear. And so that is heard and will be taken under advisement, and we will look into that. The Cultural Speaker Series, I need to know myself a little bit more about the who, what, where, and how. And again, I think Director Peterson mentioned that we will be hearing a little bit more information back on that. And Superintendent New?
Thank you. I've asked Wanda Brown Billingsley to present to the board on the 29th on the
Okay.
speaker series.
Thank you. Also heard tonight around issues related to facilities from the Golden Gaze, and I do recall emails, and I do recall a couple of responses, and now I do recall, and I'm hearing that there'll be some response. So please keep in touch and let us know and send us good videos, not the ARC videos. So, and I appreciate the patience. Sometimes it takes that, but it's also understanding the systems one has to get through. So thank you very much for your continued advocacy for the folks at TJ. I know the students appreciate it. I guess I also want to just reiterate again the focus of the global initiative really being focused on jobs for kids. And those jobs need to be wherever opportunities take children. And for some it might be Federal Way and it might be Boeing. Or for others, it could be China and it'll be Boeing. Or it'll be Amazon and it'll be in Sweden or in Finland or somewhere else. And our job as a board is to consider not our children, but the 22,000 children who are students of this district, and creating opportunity, access, and policy that allows and affords those opportunities on an equitable basis to 22,000 students. Every parent in this room will continue to advocate for their own child. And I would expect that we would all do that, and we will always do that. And in the same respect, as a board member, we have to consider and create policy that impacts every student, not my child, but every student. And each experience and each place that a person has come from kind of flavors and brings a perspective unto themselves. So we have 120 languages here, and we could go visit our schools here, but there's also a value in learning about those students that are in our schools that come from going to places where they come from, and understanding the religions and the cultures and the experiences that they have. And to put yourself in that position, and some of you have had that opportunity, others have not. Our students don't see themselves as being proud of being trilingual. I had to tell a student the other day, you need to be shouting to the world that you have 3 languages. You know, English is your learned language. You came with 2 mother tongues, and that is something to be proud of. That will take you so far. And we have students that speak English that need to and want to be bilingual, trilingual, and we don't have those opportunities yet in such a way where they could go to a country and really immerse themselves and experience and be part of that. And that's what this is about as well. But first and foremost, we want our kids to graduate, and we want them to have jobs and be successful human beings and making living wages so they can come back to your house to visit, as superintendent would say, but not to live, but to also be happy and healthy and create things we don't even know need to be created, and it looks so different than it did 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And there are things being created or thought of that we don't even know exist yet. And we have to ready our students to be able to do that, and that's what this is about as well. So, we are ready for Parent View with Ron Mayberry. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Wilson, board members, Superintendent New. I'm here tonight to speak a little bit to our Parent View product and also our grading communication plan, for which you have a purple binder, I believe, in front of you that goes over some of the communications we are in process on and things that we've done in the past to move forward on this. The piece I want to highlight tonight out of that book, though, is our parent forums that are coming up. Our first took place at Totem last Friday. Our next event, hosted by our middle schools, is at Sequoia October 24th, Illahee, Sahale, Kylo, Lakota, Sacagawea. Those evening events will focus on our policy, or standards-based education policy 2420. They also will review the calculations, show parents how to get into their parent account, and some of the features that are in our Parent View. So I've brought just a piece of that with me tonight just to talk about. And one other slide that I did want to share with you that's in your PowerPoint copy is that our schools are doing some of these nights already. Some of the ones I emailed some of our principals just to get real quick response back to find out some of the events they've already hosted, in which gradebook is a topic. And they've done a great job of doing that, and I'm sure as the next day or two goes on, I'll hear back from some of our other principals. So Parent View and grade calculations. This is the exact PowerPoint we used on Saturday at the event Therese Moore hosted, and it went very well. We had 35 parents that went to our 2 sessions, and we were able to help several parents actually activate their account and get things going. So within this, and I am going to pass through several of these slides without even pausing on them, but this first one I did want to kind of hover on. So from a parent perspective and student perspective, we still are entering assignments into our gradebook. That part has not changed. And with those assignments, we're connecting those or linking them to standards. Sometimes an assignment could have more than one linked standard. So in our example on the board, I show 4 different assignments linked to 3 different priority standards. For all grade levels, we are doing a power law calculation. So that's our elementary, our middle school, and our high school. At the elementary level, we are stopping and providing feedback to our parents and students on how they've done on that priority standard or skill based on a score of 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're not doing an overall subject grade. All right. And then at our high school and middle school, we're taking those priority standards, those calculated priority standards for which there are multiple entries that teacher may do, and those are pushed up to determine an overall grade. So for example, in our elementary, this is what our parents will see on their report cards coming up soon. They're going to see, based on standards that have already been assessed in their class, they're going to see a marking period score of 2, 3, 4, 1, and then they're going to see a continuous report of that as the year goes on. So marking period 1 will stay on this report card so they can compare to marking period 2 to 3 and 4. So they'll see the growth of their student as time went on. In our middle schools, we are still reporting in a BAME, beginning, approaching, meeting, excelling. And in our matrix, as we take our priority scores, we are combining those to make determinations as to which their overall score would be. Our excelling students are earning 4s and 3s, with a majority of those scores being 4s. To earn an excelling, they cannot have an overall calculated grade of 2 or 1 on any priority standard. In meeting, they're getting 4s and 3s again with no 2s or 1s, but this time the 3s are the majority score. For approaching, it's 4, 3s, and 2s, with no more than 68% of those scores being 2s. So the challenge we have right now is our teachers are entering scores into their grade books and starting to assess to standards, but there's a growing amount of data in them. So if there is only one standard so far measured in a grade book, then 100% of whatever that value is the current score. So we do have some students who may be getting temporarily an F score because 100% of their scores are 2. As soon as the second priority standard is measured, that changes greatly, so then 50% of their scores would be that 2 possibly still, and then the value of that next priority standard. Okay? This works similarly with our ABC conditional matrix. Again, 4s and 3s earn an A, no 2s or 1s in the A band. 4s and 3s in our B band, with a majority being 3s. Our Cs are 4 3s and 2s with no 1s, and no more than 68% of them can be 2s. And finally, our Fs would be any score that has a current calculated priority score of 1. So as we think about that 1, that is our conversation that we need to have with our teachers and through our parents, and really understand why a student is earning a 1 currently. Because that's a 1 on one particular assessment. That doesn't necessarily mean they're getting a 1 on the priority standard as we combine and do multiple assessments. So as those multiple assessments go in, the only way they can continue to earn a 1 is for them to have 1s on every single assessment within that priority score. And then we would need to ask, why are they getting that 1? What interventions have been done already to help that student grow from a 1 to a 2 or 3, and so on. And that's the same thing when we're looking at our beginning band and our middle school. So tonight, this is what we were really coming in to speak to. I wanted to show you briefly what a parent does go through to activate their account. In the mail, we sent out over 26,000 letters about a week and a half ago, a little less than a week and a half ago. And of those 26,000 letters, so far today, we have about 2,100 parents who have activated their accounts. When they go to the website, they're going to click on this, I'm a parent. If their student goes to the same website, they click on the I'm a student. They're taken to this, I have an activation code, and in their letter, they need to enter 3 pieces of information, their first name, their last name, and this activation code. The key to this, though, is they all have to match what we have on the letter. So if we've somehow misread one of their yellow cards and spelled their name incorrectly, what we have in our system is what needs to match at this point. We, of course, want to correct that error as soon as possible. That will get them nicely into our system and able to start using their parent account. So they go through an agreement, they get to put this information in, they set up their own username, their own password, and link it to an email account, and then they get into this screen here. And at this screen, if they have multiple students at the top of this bar, they'll see their multiple students. And so whether they're looking at an elementary school student or a middle school student, they're going to click on these various categories. We have calendar, which does nicely list anything that's been in the grade book that has an assignment due date. They can filter their calendar. And I'm going to skip through that one. They can filter their calendar, so if they want to look at just math entries or English entries or whatnot, they have that ability. The attendance is more clear than in our past system, so they can see the tardies, the excused tardies, and they have a summary. So along with the 3 lines that they're filling out, or the multiple lines that might be filling out for a student, there's a total calculation that's taking place too. We have an easy email link, so if they've already logged into their email, a simple click of this little envelope icon beside the teacher's name will open up an email, and they can simply send off an email quickly and not have to look up the email address of that teacher to complete that. We do have class websites that are starting to be used by some of our teachers. Students have not had access to this system until October 1st, so teachers have not been building anything in this system, waiting for students to get that access. We have the actual grade book, and this is one space that lists all the classes and their current grades. The next page is, and I would agree with the parent who commented on this landing space, this score column where it says not graded and C standards. The C standards was actually a temporary fix for a problem we addressed really early from feedback from our own parents right here in the district office. We gave early access to some of our ESC parents who have children in our system, and that was one of the pieces of feedback we got from that parent. The C standards is where you're going to want to drill into. What we're suggesting to the EduPoint company that makes this software is to develop that view to standards view, and we will see that coming soon to the upgraded system. We don't have an ETA as to when that change will be made, but that's what we're going to go with. And then they would land in this particular view. they will land in this particular view where they're able to see the standards that have been assessed. And by clicking on the given standard or the arrow beside the given standard, then it expands and shows the parent and student what has been assessed via that assignment and what total score is currently being applied. So in the case of this example, we have 2 4s being entered. The final mark for that standard currently is at a 4. Power law does not kick in and make any calculations until the 3rd assessment. So the first assessment that a student may get in our system is that score. So if they only have 1 assessment, it happens to be a 4, then their overall priority score is a 4. On the second assessment, the current overall priority score is their second assessment. So if they've gone from a 4 to a 1, then they are getting a 1 currently. If they go from a 1 to a 4, then they're getting a 4. It's on the 3rd assessment that it starts doing some of the calculations that Mr. Scuderi had in his PowerPoint. All right. There is a way for our parents now to edit information about their student demographics, and they submit that. It shows up at the school level for them to confirm the entry and make it live. And then lastly, we do have a Parent View app. It has limited capabilities compared to the website. That's not unusual for apps to have. They pick some of the most primary needs and place those into the apps. We have, the company produces an app for Android and for iOS devices, and those are available. Directions were passed out. So at our upcoming parent forums, in addition to having conversations and inviting parents to come to one or more of these parent forums, we will have a kiosk set up in which we have someone that will help parents activate their parents' accounts if they need that. If they, for some reason, didn't get a letter in the mail, we can look their parent up and give them the necessary activation code and the letter that didn't make it to them. And basically, we'll be there to support them in getting into the system. So thank you. That's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Madam President, I think it would be a positive move for us to have a work study that involved parents at some point on the changes that have been made. It sounds like there's a little bit of confusion on the changes.
So an action item would be to,
Madam President, I move that the board establish a work study within the next 30 days for parents, maybe a forum at this location within the next 30 days for parents, and Director Mayberry could lead that discussion.
is there a second to that motion?
I'd second that.
Any discussion?
I'm just trying to figure out what that would be different than the current forums that are happening for parents. I don't know if it's kind of ahead of what the district is rolling out. So I know that there's frustration right now. Some of this, maybe we probably should have had this earlier, but.
Well, I think we had a work study on this. I want to say it was in the spring in June, or possibly May, and we were actually in this room that particular day doing that work study, and so we brought some of these things forward. However, the software was still being implemented. We had a large software implementation happening with our student information system. So there by no means there is some new learning that has taken place on all parts, and so a work study in which we invite parents in for that type of conversation, I think would be a smart move on our part to do. I think our parent forums, while there will be some of those sorts of comments and help, we're hoping to set those up to support parents in their role as in supporting their child in our system. So we want them to know knowledge and have knowledge about our system, but we also want them to know how to use the software and what information is important for them to know.
So we have a motion on the floor in a second, and we're in
Yeah.
discussion. So
Madam
is there any
President,
other discussion from?
Are there forums taking place now?
Those are the list of forums that were on the PowerPoint earlier that were related to Parent View, and I believe sharing specifically the information in the notebook. And your notebook is right here, Director Moore, because
Yes.
it's sitting in front of me. But I also hear there may be some value in doing a forum specifically now that we have users that could provide feedback to us. So again, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Madam President, if I may continue, the difference between the forum and the work study is that it would require board members to, the difference between the forum and the work study is that board members would have to attend, and I think that would be valuable.
Any more discussion? Okay. Sorry.
Before we vote, can we get clarity on what the work study? I've heard a couple of different things here for this work study. What exactly do we want in a work study, and what do we mean by having parents come and communicate with us?
I think it should look something like an open conversation where the gentleman that issued his concerns could have open and free conversations, not only with Director Mayberry, but also with board members on how it looks and us to be engaged in the conversation as fully as parents. Whatever the current forum that's being presented can be presented at that. It would just, we would be there in order to see what's taking place and perceive, look at it and try to put ourselves in the spot of understanding what's going on. A mere suggestion. I don't think we can over-communicate on this particular topic, so I don't think more is less, more is more.
One suggestion I might have is that at the forums that are coming up, we allow some opportunity and communication about if we're going to do a forum, that if people are so interested, because there are those that think it's a great conversation and others that want to be as far away from it as they can, but provide an opportunity for parents that may not find their way here through this conversation to know that there's another opportunity to provide input or provide us with their own experiences and their suggestions. So with that we have a motion on the floor to have a work study in the next 30 days that includes feedback and parent participation along with board members around the new parent view and the rollout of the software. Is that
Yes.
what I hear? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Since we are still on with Mr. Mayberry there.
Yes.
The one question that I did have is, and this kind of stemmed back to the question, when a parent drills down into an assignment and it says, click on the assignment to get more information, does it show whether or not the assignment was turned in? Or does it just give what the assignment was?
Assignments are linked to standards, so there's not a score put into the grade book on the assignment per se. It's put into the standard that was assessed, and yes, it does give a score. So if there's multiple linked standards, then it would have 2 scores possibly, or, depending on how many were linked.
But in case of the item that says not graded, does it show whether the assignment was turned in?
Yes, by clicking on that, you'd see.
It will show that.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask this question the way it was asked to me by a student in Advancing Leadership Youth last week. If I get a 1 on any of the priority standards, I get an F, regardless of how many 4s, 3s, or 2s I have.
So if you get a 1 on a given assessment, that's not true. If you have currently a 1 on a calculated priority standard, so again, going back to my example, if you have only 1 assessment so far, and that happens to be a 1 on that priority standard, the answer is yes, they are currently getting an F until they either retake that particular assessment or have additional opportunities and other assessments are given.
Can you speak to, and in a term that a child or student would understand, how that is possible? So if in a subject there are 15 things that I need to know to be fully comprehensible of that subject, if there is one thing that I just don't get and I don't know it and I've assessed and I'm not getting it, I'm failing that class because of that one priority standard.
Currently, as the policy is written, yes, that is exactly. The key conversation, though, comes back to principals who have tools for which they can see the ones that may be issued, which are currently calculating to F, so that they can have conversations and better understand the level of, or the reasons behind those ones being issued. Based on the rubrics that TFL has designed, the score of 1 is a student who understands very little about that particular priority standard, and that score again is given just on a single assessment, and that only has an impact until the second assessment or third assessment is taken. And at that point, our teachers' jobs are to continue teaching and instructing in that point and bring their understanding up to a 2, 3, possibly even a 4.
And if there is no assessment on that particular priority standard, what grade does the student get?
If there's no assessment on a priority standard?
If there's no assessment, and so, and I'm asking this question because I have been told by students that they may not get to all of the priority standards in the course of a semester or a year. And so if that happens to students in the classroom, what kind of grade?
Any assessment, or excuse me, any standard not assessed will not have any impact on their score.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last question, I asked this question before, how are we, as a district administrator, you mentioned the principal's role, how are we ensuring equity for our students, that that we do not have students in our school district that are allowed to get ones and fail because nobody is watching and no one's asking questions, and students aren't being retaught, or a focus isn't put on them to help them really learn.
I'm going to weigh in on that. Thank you for asking that question. That goes directly to our targets for this year, and the fact that we are generating a list of students by names who are struggling and ensuring their success. You know, not to go back and talk about the Finland, but in Finland, the belief is, as we all know, that there is no such thing as student failure, only system failure. And so we have got to do an intensive job of finding out who those students are that are struggling, and when they're not being successful, we have to reallocate those resources to ensure their success. That's what we're currently doing right now. And in fact, it is that very work that's tied to this celebration of working with Michael Fullen and this international project.
I want to know that it's in practice and not in theory.
Right.
That's all, I mean, that's what I'd like to be reassured of.
I would like to add a little bit. So I've had lots of deep conversations with Mr. Brower, Ms. Hall, Ms. Davis, and our interim principal at Federal Way High, Chad. I forgot his name all of a sudden, but my apologies. Luttrell, thank you. And I know those conversations are taking place, and we're moving towards that better understanding of our scores, and there will be continued conversations at those schools about this topic. So
I'm sorry, I'm going to push it one more time, and Rob,
sorry.
you can, yeah, I'm going to push this button in one more place. We have students who are expressing anxiety about this, and they're expressing anxiety about this because teachers are telling them, if you get a 1 on a priority standard in my class, you're failing. And they're not telling them that I'm going to help you not get a 1, and these are the strategies that we're going to use to make sure that you don't fail and I don't fail you. That's not the conversation that's happening with our students. And so that's where anxiety is coming from. And I don't know how we shift that, but it needs to shift.
Perhaps in our work study on the whole topic, we invite students as well. That could share their experiences and kind of how things have been communicated, because as we all know, it's not what you say about how you say it, and we can all say the same thing, but how it's interpreted could be very different. And I think it would add another lens and perspective and a stakeholder group that really needs to be part of this conversation.
And I've had many discussions with Superintendent New about this very thing, that when a student has a 1, is he failing, is he not? we've talked about this back and forth, and I think it's a great opportunity for you to bring that out, and for the kids who have this explained to them already, how they understand it. What is their interpretation as to what's being explained to them, so they understand and that the parents understand completely as we move forward.
And you also know that you were with me when this conversation was taking place, and we were talking about adjusting the matrix, and the reaction that we had was not favorable for doing it at that time, but we will continue that conversation, and I just want to remind you that in the end, that teacher judgment prevails, and that if a student has 14 4s and 1 1, that teacher certainly has the right to give that student an A.
I have two questions. One is, I think we need to keep remembering how important it is to share with parents what it is they need to be looking for in order to be concerned. So a 1 clearly is a concern, and another 1 is clearly a bigger concern. There should never be more than 1 1. And as a parent, if I'm going in and every time the 1 is still a 1, I need to know as a parent that's a concern to me, because it's not just that there's something in the box, it's looking at what that thing in the box means. And I think in our roles and in our work with families as we do this work, that's critically important. And I think it goes right along with our conversation about the first time a parent should see a 1 should not be at a reporting period. So it just goes along with what should a parent understand, because this is a great system if you understand it and you know it. And we know it's going to take a little bit of time for all of us to get used to that. The other question I have is related to some of the feedback, and one is in the audience. There was some question, about the calendar. And in the calendar, I believe it was if there is more than 1 assignment on any given day in a calendar, the box in the calendar is only this big. So if there's multiple assignments in a calendar square, it sounds quite detailed, but how would one know if it looked like there was a whole bunch on that little box you showed us? And as, there, that's nice. But will there be more than just English? And how do I know is that as a parent, will there be something to show me there may be more than 1 assignment in that box? How
Yes.
do I know that?
So as this calendar starts, this is a snapshot that was taken a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Where you see the words all across the top there, those are filters, and so a parent, because this calendar will look, some of the ones I've seen this week look very populated with lots of stuff. And so they can use that filter to just filter to the math class, for instance, or they can just see the assignments that don't have scores yet. So there's multiple ways for them to bring that to their attention.
The only other question I had was, is there any kind of norm on an expectation between when an assignment or a test is given and that is entered into the system? So if a parent is looking, they can expect that it will take 2 days to have something, even though it's real time. Real time is still teachers who have to enter information and data into a system. So has there been a conversation or has there been communication about how long a parent might expect when their child comes home and says, I really did turn it in, and it may not show up yet because a staff person may not have actually got it entered into the system? Is that just up to buildings or teachers to decide?
We do have in our policy a statement recommending multiple entries per week for good communication and feedback.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Can I just add one more statement? With parents and students coming, I think we should include teachers as well. So I'd like to make that recommendation.
Excuse me,
to
what
the
was that?
board. With, I'm sorry, with,
The work study.
with parents and students coming to this work study on grading, I do think we should add teachers to the
Yeah, I think,
conversation as well.
I think if our idea is to have stakeholders give us some feedback on how the system's working, it's one thing to do it before we start, but now we have some experience and people can share with us in a kind of a problem-solving way, how do we go to the next step and make the next rollout better? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sally, are you ready? The 2014 levy collection resolution.
Good evening, President Wilson, members of the board, Superintendent New, students, staff, and community. I have for you this evening actually some business to consider regarding the 2014 tax collections and the final tax certifications. I will walk you through a couple of slides to give you a little background. First couple slides really set the stage chronologically. On February 14th of 2012, our voters were asked to support the full educational programs and operations levy, and I emphasize the word full in that sentence because we asked our voters at that point in time to both be willing to renew the ongoing $45 million educational programs and operations levy, sometimes referred to as the EP&O, and to potentially add an $8 million tax increase because local effort assistance, which is a state tax relief funding mechanism, was in jeopardy due to the state's budget shortfall. I will remind all of us that our voters said yes to this $53 million educational programs and operations levy for calendar year 2013 and calendar year 2014. The next thing you might recall is that at the second public hearing for the adoption of the 2013-14 school year, school districts are required to set your calendar year tax collections as part of the fiscal year budget. And in that budget adoption, you set levies for the EP&O at $46.1 million, so already below the $53 million authorized by the voters. You set a debt service fund tax collection, which is the money that we collect to pay off bonds that we've issued to build buildings, at $17.2 million. And we set the levy certification for the capital projects fund at $14.4 million. That's the 4.4 for the tech levy and the $10 million for Federal Way High School. We talked about the fact that levies can be adjusted through formal board action and that rollbacks are expected in October or November. Levy adjustments must be made in the general fund. Some of you might remember my puppet hands when I go out and do presentations about the educational programs and operations levy, because we ask the voters for a particular amount, but we have in our state the honor of having a 4-page mathematical calculation. It's not quite as bad as power law, but it is a 4-page mathematical calculation that sets our legal authority. So in the general fund, every year school boards have to make adjustments to their general fund levy to roll back to the legal amount. So I have a picture for you, because sometimes pictures are easier. So the voter authorization for calendar year 2014 is $53 million. The calculated 2014 legal authority is $44,809,368. These legal calculations come from OSPI and they're issued towards the end of September. So we've had this for about 3 weeks now. You might also recall during the general fund budget adoption, because of the fact that our state is making movements towards its paramount duty, its constitutional obligation to make ample funding to public education, thanks to the McCleary lawsuit, that we also talked about maintaining a commitment to our voters. You'll remember we reduced fees for parents. We also talked about maintaining our 2014 taxes at the same level as 2013. So the resolution in front of you this evening not only rolls our general fund levy back to the 2014 levy, but it rolls it back to the 2013 amount, saving our voters from a potential tax rate increase. So here's another way to look at that so you can see that math. Here's the voter authorization at $53 million. Our legal rollback, because of the local effort assistance, is $8.1 million. That left us with a 2014 legal authority of 44.8. Again, honoring the commitment we made during budget based on the superintendent's recommendation and what you ultimately authorized. We have a local rollback beyond what we're legally required to roll back of $519,544. again, leaving the 2014 tax certification, assuming you adopt the resolution in front of you this evening, at $44,289,824. The second resolution in front of you to also roll back taxes is in the debt service fund. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, the debt service fund we have a required principal and interest payment in the debt service fund of $17.2 million. You know that one of the silver linings in the recession has been our ability to refinance bonds. Similar to refinancing your home, we're able to take advantage of much lower interest rates. One of the things that's different than refinancing your home is I can target those savings into particular years. So we've been able to save $4.2 million in refunding. Part of that savings is coming in calendar year 2014 by rolling back our required payment by $1.3 million. So I have $1.3 million in savings as a result of the refunding that will reduce that debt service tax collection to $15.9 million, which is exactly the same amount that we collected in 2013. Just another way for you guys to look at this, because it's a lot of numbers. Here's the 3 levies, the amount that was authorized by the voters, and the amount that you're being asked to certify. You don't have to recertify the capital levy because we are leaving that at the $14.4 million, but you have a resolution to roll back the educational programs and operations levy by $8.7 million and the debt service levy by $1.3 million. Again, providing this community with a $10 million tax relief for calendar year 2014. And with that, unless you have any specific questions, you do have 2 resolutions in front of you this evening. Resolution 2013-23 that adjusts the general fund educational programs and operations levy, and 2013-24 that rolls back the debt service collection.
Sally, do you know what an average number each taxpayer is saving? Have you thought about that? I know we shared with the levy what it was going to cost on average for taxpayers.
Right. So when we talked about, and again, when you talk about an average homeowner with an average house valued at about $240,000, people own houses that are worth a lot more than that or a lot less than that. So the impacts they see are different than the average. This is always the challenge when you're averaging, right? Because you're not reaching the
So maybe
edges.
there's a range, yeah. What's the range other than the average?
And if my memory serves me correctly, for the average homeowner, I believe the estimated tax bill for the average homeowner, which was roughly a $240,000 home, was just about $240. There's just about a 1-to-1 relationship in our community with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I will. So I move that the Board of Directors adopt Resolution 2013-23 to decrease the educational program and operation excess levy collection for the 2014 tax year from the voter authorization amount of $53 million to $44,289,824.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Do we have another motion on the floor?
I move that the Board of Directors adopt Resolution 2013-24 to approve a $1,300,000 decrease in the debt service levy collections for the 2014 tax year from $17.2 million to $15.9 million.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Rod Leland, presentation on the capital levy and Federal Way High School update.
I'll begin with just a brief introduction. I'm going to ask Arnie Mansavage with our SRG architects for the project to give you an update on the Federal Way High School project. So, we've been having a lot of conversations. We met with the Federal Way High School staff in early October for 2 days at the school. We made the design team available with diagrams and graphics that they could comment on. On October 8th, we met with the City of Federal Way planning staff to keep them up to date and gain the advantage of their opinion, since we had met with them earlier and given them progress drawings at that time. So now we're more informed about their expectations and our needs. On October 9th, we held an open house at the service center. At least one board member, I was having lots of conversations there, so I know at least one board member, perhaps others attended. We think there was about 25 people who came. The conversations were lively and the questions were excellent. And here we are tonight to give you an update on our design process. And in late November, we'll be back. The superintendent will schedule us at a board meeting and ask you to look at our schematic design and give your approval. Not required in the state process, but it's a step, it's an important step. It means that we're moving through a gate and we'll bear down hard on the design that we have at that time. And with your comments, you'll be sure and we'll be sure that we understand clearly what the expectations are as we move into design development. So at this time, we have a bit of a slideshow, and we'll take comments and questions after that.
All right. Hi. I'm Barney Mansavage with SRG Architects. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm going to show you some pictures. And this first slide, and you guys have the package there, is some of the maybe site tenants' goals that prior to this phase, Rod said we're in schematic design. We were in concept design. And so prior to where we are now, in April, we went through a site selection process, and that was presented to the board, and there was a site selection committee, and these are some tenets about how to design or what to think about in a campus. And at that time, we've had a site selection that chose the southeast corner of the site. So I'm going to just go through a number of images. Everything you're going to see from this point on is exactly what was in front of the public at the open house October 9th, just last week. Where we were in concept design in selecting the southeast corner, it was really a placeholder. It was a building footprint that represented something in reality, but what we've been doing since is refining what is in the building, and that's what all these conversations are about. So if you were to go to the school board website and look at the site plan from April, in broad strokes, it's very similar to where we are today. And what we're doing is refining the building program, the list of spaces that might occupy it on day one, and then looking into the future. So the site plan is here on the southeast corner. US 99 is to the right in this slide. I'm not going to try, since we have only a few minutes, I'm going to just roll through some of these. But the stadium is not something we're touching, but the entire parcel is being kind of planned. So there's some site work on the other side of the stadium that you're seeing in blue that become kind of stormwater facilities, and the building footprint is sort of finding its way and its size and shape. And in broad strokes, the building is kind of holding the corner and presenting this, back to slide one, this kind of visibility to the community. And someone said very graciously about planting a flag for the community and kind of bringing this building out to the street and letting people be proud of it. And so one of the things we've started to talk about is what is this presence on the street. So I'm just going to roll through this quickly. It's a 3-story building in the kind of program as we're envisioning it, and it's really holding an edge to 99. So 99 is just to the right and kind of creating a welcoming presence. And it's not architecture yet. It doesn't have materials and really what it's going to look like, but this is sort of size, shape, mass for a size of building as we refine the list of spaces that we think we know about, and then the ones that we want to allow for adaptability into the future, which I'll talk about as we get a little further. So I'm going to let this just sort of roll around. So this is the 99 facade. And then as you look to the north, you can start to see that this is the northern edge. In the distance in white is the old kitchen facility. So is everyone kind of placing themselves. So the facility sort of in the foreground of this image is sort of theater and PE, fitness, athletic spaces. And then the connective tissue is this kind of mass or volume along Highway 99, which is really kind of the center or the heart of where you enter the building, and you'll see that in some plans in a second. And then the learning space kind of occupies this starts to take on these 3 stories that hold the Southern Road 308 and these 3 fingers of space, and then it defines this outdoor space, these courtyard spaces in between, back to the site plan. So I'll roll around quickly through this. So looking sort of from the stadium back into this courtyard space. And so what it's starting to talk about is creating a strong and kind of welcoming presence in the community, kind of a protected edge maybe, but then on the inside kind of a protected inner sanctum with these courtyard spaces and the way that the program starts to kind of surround this outdoor space and then connects it to the rest of the 40 acres of the campus. And so some imagery about what those outdoor spaces in between those fingers become. We have some imagery to start eliciting thoughts. And so when we have these public meetings and we meet with the faculty and the students, we often ask them to put stickers on images that they like. We've done some great sessions with students that just boards get covered with red dots. And it's really sort of telling, and it's just a straw poll, but you get a sense of what is sort of exciting about. So this is sort of some imagery of maybe sort of outdoor spaces. And so now getting to the inside of the building real quickly, this is something that was part of concept design back in April. And in concept design, there was what we call the concept level program. Program architecturally would be a list of spaces. If this pie chart represents 232,000 square feet, which is sort of our target for the size of the building, there's a certain portion of this shown in color that as we vet it and discuss it, we will make some decisions, and that's where this end of November Thanksgiving timeline comes in, that will set some of those things in place. So not the least of which is fitness, PE, athletics. We'll make some decisions on sizes of gym and support spaces and auxiliary gyms and performing arts, food service. And those things start to become more fixed as we make those decisions and vet them with all of you so that after Thanksgiving, when we finish schematic design, we'll go, as Rod said, hit hard. There's about a year left from today to get design done so that this can be in construction in next fall. So there's the red things that are the things in color are real important to sort of vet. And then everything else is maybe the most important. It's the learning spaces that you might traditionally think of as classrooms and laboratory spaces. And we're kind of rethinking those as describing them as presentation spaces, working and building spaces, tinkering spaces. And they're shown in gray because what we're trying to think of them as is as adaptable into the future, almost in the sense of a commercial office space being built as a core in a shell, that the tenant is going to change over time. And I think the thing that I think your district knows and many school districts knows is the constant is change, and the educational paradigms will change over time. So today in our office, Vince was in our office with Chad Luttrell, the interim the principal at Federal Way. And so it's great to have these kind of conversations with the curriculum committee work that's going on so that as we discuss what the educational paradigm could be, the idea for us is not to ask you to be clairvoyant and tell us what it's going to be, but that we allow for all of the above. If we want to, if the curriculum committee decides and the district decides one day that there's a certain paradigm of learning, how can the building adapt to that? And that's what the gray area is about. And so in broad strokes, I'll flip through the plans here that along as you move, this is the lowest level. And the gray hatched area to the right is because this concept of taking the building and bringing it to the street, and as I've described maybe before, getting it out of the hole, is that there's a lower level that's kind of pushed into the hillside. And then as you move up, level 2, there's another set of spaces that kind of overlook. So all the athletic fitness to the north, dining commons kind of wraps the inner courtyard, and then as you move up, you kind of enter along Federal Way. So this image is basically showing you that you can enter either sort of north or south, sort of from the US 99 side, and then find your way into a middle zone and get through the building. So there's a couple of images, and then a third story. So that yellow space in all of these spaces along the road is kind of the control point, the nexus. And then along the way, what we've talked about is this concept of third place. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but in your adult life, your home is maybe your first place, and your work is your second place, and where you have relationships with your community is your third place. And that concept applies to education in all the spaces that maybe are traditionally kind of around in between the classroom. And so allowing, I don't know if you can see the mouse moving, but these kind of nodes that become spaces for that informal interaction, and that all of this space along this connective tissue that kind of connects the more known spaces with the adaptable spaces becomes not just useful space that's programmed function, but is this third place, this place where you form relationships with your peers, your teachers, and the community. And so a few images to maybe kind of get you thinking. It's very, very loose, but this might be some sense of what it's like to enter from this southern corner. So the arrow down there on the right, if you were to stand right where that arrow is, it might look something like this. You get a sense of 3 stories of space. You get a sense of places where people can gather. The yellow space that I described is sort of the watchful eyes of the adults in the building. So those are always at control points where you enter, and that you can look in and see through to this kind of inner sanctum. And then, so this is, you would come down and into that plane that's back there is sort of envisioning looking into the courtyard. And so you can imagine maybe some kind of putting these two together, what some of those kind of interim spaces look like before you get into the classroom. From the north, this is the same, and on the north end, because of the grade change, you would be entering at a higher elevation, so you'd be coming in and looking down over, and then that plane in the background again is indicating that you'd be looking into the courtyard space, and then you get a sense of those fingers of space beyond and sort of connecting mentally the entire map of the school in kind of one image as you enter. You can come in, find this common space, you'll see the classroom wings beyond, and some other imagery about what some of those will be. So where do we go from here? And this is the same space looking back. So I'm sort of standing at the kind of courtyard looking back towards, in those plans, the kind of round shape that might represent the theater. And what is a theater space and a performing arts space, both as a theater and as a kind of a day-to-day activity? How does it play in the life of the school? So all these are just sort of thought starters that are conversations with the students and teachers and the curriculum committee. That help us ask questions about refining a program. So where we are today is trying to solidify what that program mix is. We will start to fill in those gray areas with things that we think we know as we work with the group for what we've called day 1, but then also test other scenarios for the year 10 and the year 20 in those gray zones. So the short schedule is, as Rod said, the end of November to complete schematic design, make some significant decisions at the end of schematic design, and then continue to flesh out the design for construction at the end of about a year from now. So I probably went too long. I'm sorry.
I just want to say that I appreciate the visuals, and those of us that had the opportunity to look at other schools and other places, the flexible learning spaces, and the use of space was one thing that stands out as a learning, and lots of creative use of very small spaces, and also the space is the learning environment, and not a lot of teachers having rooms, but teachers working with groups of students in places that make sense. And so clearly not the traditional classrooms and buildings, but it'll be exciting to see how things develop as this moves forward.
I have just 2 questions. One is, is there any other similar structures that we can go to? I know there's some pictures in here. I don't know if they were put in there because the inspiration for some of the design is already in place or implemented in other buildings. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I guess right now when I look at the design, there's not that wow factor for me. It's just kind of like, And that's, for Federal Way High School, I want to be, wow, this is awesome. And so, for me, it's like I want to give it a chance if there's some things I can see to go, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish. So that, I guess that's just my knee-jerk reaction right now, is it's, for something that we want it to be our, flagship and really drive forward with it. Is there something that we can see? Can I drive to a school somewhere and go, these are elements that we're going to try to implement with this design?
Not one that I can pinpoint now. We're at such a preliminary stage in the architecture. We're just defining space. There will be some imagery that I think will be much more of a wow factor very soon as we, so I think the wow factor to me is this ability of this kind of space along 99 and how it develops. So there's not one that I have in my brain that we should all go and drive and see. There are many great examples. In fact, I'd like to see a lot of the photographs that any of you took on your travels. But that entry experience of that space along 99 is, I think, where the wow factor is, that bringing it into the community.
Got it. The other question I had is the 3-story design. Is it because you're walking in on the second story and have a story below you and above you? 3 stories, it sounds like it sounds, most schools are usually 2-story. 3-story sounds like that's a lot of work to get up to my 3rd-story class if I'm on floor 1. So I don't know what the idea with that, if it's just trying to create a big facade in the front or what, but what's kind of the rationale with a 3-story? I'm curious.
So we have a small site. Typically for a high school, we'd start with 40 acres. We have the stadium to the east, and the direction we had was stadium stays there untouched. So we're working on a small site. And I guess a secondary but still very important issue here is we need to be able to park for stadium use and for school use. So it's a small site, and to have a presence on a site, if you drive by Federal Way High School slowly, moving north to south, you'll notice that the current school sinks at the corner, at the southeast corner, and it disappears kind of. And in order to make a statement, which I believe we all agreed was important for the school, as you're saying, we're raising it up instead of filling and bringing a first floor up and keeping it compact at the same time. But in order to fight against the isolation that you can feel in 3 stories, you notice that the fingers are fairly stubby, so they're short. It's not one long hall with more long halls off of it. And again, to reinforce that, we've just, in the past few weeks, moved to an agreement about this image that you see today. So, and we're not copying a school we've seen, but we have collected images from students, from teachers, from people who's visited other schools and said, I like this. And of course, our architects have lots of images that are driving their vision. And I'm with Barney. We brought enough to be inspirational tonight, but you can't go see it yet. It's pieces coming together.
I can say 2 quick things about the 2-story versus 3-story, only because the natural topography is creating a challenge which becomes an opportunity for us. And that is this idea of, and you said it, but at least along a portion of the Federal Way where I'm hovering here, a portion of the building, you'd come in at an elevated level. So yes, along Federal Way, this is sort of 2.5-ish, and this is sort of 3 stories as you get to that end. So, but yeah, it's about creating something on the street.
And we actually visited several schools that were 3 stories, or actually an IB school in IB graduation diploma school in Finland that we went to that was 3 stories, and so we can actually share some of the design and concepts from that. And also thinking that, I think about students who have to travel across campuses to get to classes, and so traveling up a third story probably will be okay. We can ask the students also.
Rod, I am looking at this second page here, and I don't have my glasses. So I was wondering, thanks.
Will work.
I was wondering if the community gardens are where they're located in this design, or have they been included?
I specifically invited folks from the community garden to the open house that we had last week and had a conversation with them. We had our landscape architects with us that evening, so they could have that conversation as well. And I think the easiest way I can explain it is if you look at Memorial Stadium and look at the field, which is the green oval in the middle, that's the size of the garden that was proposed. If you go back and look at our site, that's very difficult to accommodate. So at this point, they understand that and are understanding about that. But we haven't given up. And we've said, as we develop the school, we'll look for opportunities that we could present to them to approach the kind of honoring that they're looking for. And they've done a nice job of designing their dream. And in the conversation I had last week, I think they're feeling like they could find a way to accommodate that dream on a scaled back way. So they're on board. I'm trying to help them see other opportunities in the community. Right now, we've said not full scale.
Thank you.
Thanks. Director Peterson?
And you're referring to, I think the question, it's for the Federal Way Veterans Memorial Garden. Yeah, so great. That was my question as well. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will look forward to hearing more as it develops. Federal budget update. Sally McLean. The only thing between us and a board assessment.
Good evening again. I'm sorry I don't have a PowerPoint for you, so actually that should reassure you, know that I'm going to go really quickly. You know, and this is an informational item for you this evening only, because it is my duty, with whatever title you want to refer to me as, is to give you heads up when we think there may be some sort of a material deviation from the budget that we've adopted versus what we actually see occurring in our world. Typically, those kinds of deviations tend to occur around enrollment fluctuations, and we talk about those in September. You may recall last spring when we were talking about the 13-14 budget, and actually when we were talking about the 12-13 budget, we knew about federal sequestration and the fact that as long as the sequester was in place, that our federal programs were going to be diminished over time. And just as a reminder, federal funding is about 8.5% of our total general fund revenue budget, and it serves a variety of different kinds of programs, ranging from supporting our youngest children in Head Start programs to our high school students in the Air Force JROTC, which you saw here this evening. And again, as we look at sequestration, we know those programs are going to be subject to some slow erosion if sequestration is not resolved. Of course, what's happened effective October 1st is that the federal government, which fiscal year starts on October 1st, actually shut down. Education is deemed to be non-essential, so our funding, all federal funding for this year, is currently frozen. We don't anticipate in most cases that once the government gets past the October 17th deadline, and I assume reopens with a continuing resolution. We don't assume any long-term impacts to any of our federal programs, but the one program where we have received notification is related to our Head Start program. And just again, as a reminder, with most of our federal programs, we operate those programs within the revenue sources that we get. So if federal dollars are diminishing, our program offering would be diminishing. But what the superintendent and I have discussed and what I am sharing with you this evening is that in the unlikely event that our Head Start funding is actually reduced during this current year, we would depart from our normal practice and actually subsidize the program for the balance of this year. Now, I'm assuming the government's going to reopen after October 17th when I make that statement. If that doesn't happen, we'll be having an entirely different conversation. But I just wanted to provide you with that information because it's a departure from our normal practice. We don't typically subsidize the Head Start program, but it seems unfair to harm our youngest, neediest children due to a government shutdown that they cannot control. And that's it. Questions, comments?
Any questions or comments? I know families will appreciate that because there's not a lot of good news. So hopefully that will be helpful if they can't come to some resolution. So with that, if board members could complete their assessment of the meeting. And Chris, do we have action items? I think we do.
You have one, we closed one with the communication plan, we closed another with the organizational chart that you have.
Okay.
And you opened one today, and you want a work study on the parent view with parents, students, teachers, etc. And I'm wondering if you want to schedule that for November 5th, that's the next work study, and it's right now on student achievement. If you want to
Can we pull them? Because we've got to have a conversation about, Sally might need that date. So let us talk and then send you a
Right.
email. poll.
So we do have an action item, though, that we'd like to have a date set up so that we can get that out there, and we've got that scheduled. I think the other thing was the Wanda Billingsley coming to talk at the next board meeting around the speaker series.
Yeah, I've already asked her.
Oh,
I don't think
okay.
that was a board action. I've already asked her.
Got it, okay.
And we've placed it on the agenda
Thank you.
prior to tonight's
Yeah.
meeting, yeah.
One of the action items was the organizational chart, which we received a copy. Is this the most up-to-date copy? Okay, thank you.
I just finished it today.
That was in your packets, too, if you haven't seen that. Anything else? Any other action items? We had a lot going on tonight, so. All righty. With that, I will officially adjourn this meeting at 9:11. Thank you.